Mic check, mic check, mic check. This is Kerri Richardson. Mic check, mic check. Bourbon Women's Summer Sip Series 2020.
Do you hear us out there, folks? This is Mic 2, Mic 2. Let us know if you hear us. Mic check.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third and final night of our Sip Summer series with the Bourbon Women Association. I'm Kerri Richardson. I'm the president of the Bourbon Women Association, and I am so happy to be here with you this evening. We have a ton of great content for you, and I am resting assured that you are sitting back on your couch in your comfy stretch pants with a cocktail or a Glencairn in hand, ready for 3.5 hours of incredible original bourbon content. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for being with us over the past couple of nights. I cannot wait to get started. And I'm also thrilled to be here with Fred Minnick. And thank you so much, Fred, for hosting us here at Minnick Media. Tell us a little bit about what we'll see tonight.
Well, tonight we have got a star-studded cast of bourbon personalities talking about whiskey. Some of my favorite people in whiskey, from Lynn House at Heaven Hill to Andrea Wilson. So much talent. You're going to learn so much. And also, Carrie and I are sipping a little something here.
I can't wait. I've been holding back on taking my first sip because I wanted to be able to do that on camera. Is that weird?
Well, I didn't know. No, I think that's cool.
Not weird. Okay. Well, then, are we gonna nose together and then take a little something?
Yeah, let's nose together. What do you look for when you're first nosing a bourbon?
I love having a little bit of caramel off the top, but fruit. I love looking for the fruit off of the top too. I get more flavor on the first sip than I do sometimes in the nose. So
it's interesting. Yesterday, Alex from Old Dominic was talking about like how she was like trained, and she was like saying like, that first sip is how you should really be judging it when you're going through like a panel. And I thought that was really fascinating.
It's totally true. And something I have found is that your first sip is telling. And very often the first or second bourbon that you try in a flight, those tend to set the tone for what you think about the rest of them, I think, too. But fortunately, just one tonight. So I'm going to take a little sip to get us started. You all should, too, at home. I know that you've got something in your Glencairn at home. So
I'm going to get in there.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. Can we get any hints about what's in here?
Well, as I did yesterday with Peggy, I poured you a very, very special bourbon, a once-in-a-lifetime bourbon that means a lot to the bourbon community. So this is one of the greatest bourbons of the last 100 years, and it is symbolic. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right. I have my first sip. It's delightful. I'm looking forward to having some more of this over the next 3.5 hours. If you haven't picked what you're having tonight, this is a night for a special bourbon, don't you think? I mean, it's our last Sip Summer series. Go ahead and break out the bottle that you normally don't drink from, and call one of your friends. Make sure that they are tuned in on YouTube or one of the other platforms where you can watch this. Let's get started. I can't wait to go. Before we do, though, I'm going to toss to a video from some other woman that looks a lot like me to give you the official welcome from Bourbon Women. Here you go. Good evening and welcome to the third and final evening of the Sip Summer Series, a 3-day conference of virtual content that you can connect to from anywhere, your backyard, your porch, your friend's house, when you're socially distanced, of course. We appreciate the support of all of our sponsors, as well as all of our participants who have been here to make the content that you have come to expect and love. We have a couple of programs I want to make sure that you're aware of. First is the Amber Circle. If you have any connection with bourbon industry, distilling, hospitality, you know it can be a difficult bunch of industries to break into, especially if you're a woman. Bourbon Women are seeking to change that. We have a lot of women who have experience in those industries, as well as just generalized business experience. And we wanted to share that with the next generation. So last year, we created the Amber Circle, designed to connect younger women who were just making their way into the distilling and hospitality industries, and connecting them with mentors at Bourbon Women who can share time, talent, and treasure, helping them on their way in their careers. If that sounds like something you'd like to be part of, we would love to connect you with somebody. If you're a young woman that's just getting started in the industry, or an other woman who has experience in business, mentorship, or any other talent you'd like to share, we want to hear about that. Visit bourbonwomen.org to learn how you can connect with Amber Circle. Here at Bourbon Women, we recognize that we have work to do as well. That's why we have launched the Diversity and Inclusion Council. We want to help women of color to make their way into the distilling industry and hospitality industry. And we also want to make sure that we have better representation among our membership and in our leadership. Our Diversity and Inclusion Council is going to be working on all of those topics. And frankly, we need your help. If you can provide some assistance or guidance, we want to hear from you. Visit us at bourbonwomen.org. All right, let's get on with the show. This is our final evening for the SIP Summer Series, and I can't wait to see what our panelists and speakers have in store. Make sure that you thank our sponsors, Discus and Spirits United, as well as the rest of the sponsors who have made this weekend possible. Also, make sure that you connect with your local Bourbon Women branch if you don't already have one, and let us know what you think about how the summer series has gone. Visit us at bourbonwomen.org or at any of our social media platforms. We love to stay connected with you, and this is the best we can do until we can lay eyes on you here in Louisville in August 2021. Until then, enjoy the last evening of the SIP Summer Series, and cheers. Gosh, she's so good looking, don't you think? Thanks for putting up with me one more time for the SIP Summer Series welcome from the Bourbon Women Presidents, but let's get going into our content. If you have not been enjoying Heaven Hill products since you've been able to enjoy them legally, you are missing out. Heaven Hill has been an outstanding friend to Bourbon Women, so go ahead and start jotting down some questions that you may have for our Heaven Hill representative, Lynn House, and sit back and relax for our first full piece of content this evening. Lynn House from Heaven Hill is going to discuss a series with Heaven Hill called Women Behind Bars, How Prohibition Led to Industry Inclusion. Take a look.
Hello, my name is Lynn House, and I'm the National Spirit Specialist and Portfolio Mixologist for Heaven Hill Distillery. I am so excited to be joining the Bourbon Women's Summer SIP Series here and to be talking to you about Women Behind Bars, the evolution of women and how Prohibition really led to inclusion of women in the beverage industry. This is a hot topic for me. I've been in the spirits industry for over 30 years, and to see women going from being just kind of barmaids to entrepreneurs and owners and higher in the industry is really important. My own personal background, I started working in bars, putting myself through college about 30 years ago. At that time, there were almost no beverage directors that were women, but there were definitely female bartenders, definitely female barmaids and bar servers. I would stay in the industry, working my way through college, working my way through my acting career. I moved to Chicago, Illinois. I'm originally from Ohio. And when I moved to Chicago, I got to work in several restaurants, ended up in fine dining, and got bit by the craft cocktail bug about 15 years ago. From then, I would go to work at the Drawing Room, one of the first of 2 craft cocktail bars here in Chicago. After there, I left and went on to work at Graham Elliott and became the beverage director and chief mixologist. And prior to coming to Heaven Hill, I had the great honor of being the chief mixologist for Blackbird Restaurant in Chicago, a James Beard award-winning and Michelin-starred restaurant. I've been with Heaven Hill Brands for 7 years, and to see the evolution of women in this industry has been just a tremendous thing. But I think it's important that we look back in history and kind of understand where we came and know where we're going. So I'm going to jump back a little more than 100 years, actually to 1890. And what was happening in the United States between 1890 and 1920 was there was a huge boom in the beverage industry. Saloons were everywhere. Spirits flowed freely. If you watch old documentaries, you can actually see that a 4-corner street would have a bar on each corner. There was also rampant alcoholism, and that was being blamed on the destruction of the family. So during this time, we have the Anti-Saloon League that is created. They were actually huge in leading towards Prohibition in 1920. But we also want to look at where women were as far as this industry was concerned. As far as women being able to sit in bars and enjoy a cocktail, it was very, very much looked down upon. In fact, it was probably only a neighborhood saloon that you would actually see women partaking in drinking and imbibing. Women actually had to enter through a separate entrance. And in many of these establishments, they had walls, they had barriers that kept the men and women separated, because the whole concept was not to corrupt women, that bars were seedy, and that if a woman was to gather with her friends or show up unaccompanied with an escort, she could get herself into a bad situation. 1895 is when the U.S. Census was held during this time period. And I think it's really interesting to note when you look as far as women who made the beverage industry a career, we had shortly under 56,000 people who were working as bartenders in the United States. Of that 56,000, 55,660 were men, and only 147 were women. So prior to the 1920s, you did not see a lot of women making the beverage industry a career. It was just frowned upon, and they weren't allowed. There was a lot of dram laws in a lot of states in which states would close down venues. In fact, there was a huge case in 1892 in which St. Louis ran a sting operation essentially and closed down every single venue that had women working in those bars. So what happens? Perceptions of drinking continue to evolve during this period of time. The Anti-Saloon League becomes very, very prominent. Other organizations spawn from this. And in 1920, Prohibition, that great experiment, goes into effect. So from 1920 to 1933 in the United States, for the most part, it was illegal to consume alcoholic beverages. It was illegal to produce alcoholic beverages. And most importantly, it was illegal to sell alcoholic beverages. The exceptions to that rule was going to be if you had some sort of medicinal or religious license associated to the product that you were creating. But what happens during this period is super exciting. A lot of people like the tipple, a lot of people like to have fun, and so drinking goes underground, and this is where we have the creation of the speakeasy. Here in Chicago, we're famous for having the Hinky Dink District. It's a 5-block radius of space that had about 5,000 brothels and speakeasies within that 5 blocks. Very, very famous as far as drinking history. If you watch Ken Burns' documentary Prohibition, he will talk in depth about the Hinky Dink District and just really what a phenomenon it was. But what happened during Prohibition was, instead of men and women being separated and people of different ethnicities being separated, everybody was unified in the fact that if you were imbibing or if you were creating cocktails inside of an alcoholic establishment, you were a scofflaw. So they were all bound by being outlaws. And so for the first time in U.S. history, you really have men and women intermingling. You have people of different ethnicities intermingling. You have women working behind the bar freely because it was underground. And you see entrepreneurship with women. 1933, Prohibition ends. And we now, because of the flapper era and everything that came out of Prohibition, there is now the feeling that women don't belong in bars because they will seduce you, and the women who are in a bar are going to bring in a bad element to this bar. And so once again, women as patrons, as women as workers, are for the most part kicked out of working in bars. 1942, Pearl Harbor happens, a huge turning point in World War II. We've heard of Rosie the Riveter. There's also Bessie the bartender. What happens during this period of time is that jobs are open. There's a lot of need for work. Soldiers are off fighting in Japan, in Germany, all around the world against suppression in the world. And here in the United States, women started filling those jobs that were open, including bartending jobs. And so women come back and are behind the bar and enjoying the bar and are, taking over several other different kinds of industry and business. And so once again, as women, we are claiming that power. We're realizing what we can do to bring income, what we can do to satisfy ourselves, what we can do as entrepreneurs. That all gets kind of kicked aside once World War II ends. Soldiers come back, and bartending was deemed as a job for men, and men wanted their jobs back. And so a lot of women were kicked out of the venues where they had been working. And once again, a woman behind the bar kind of goes underground. It doesn't mean that we've lost our zest for the industry. It just means that we have to be more creative as to how we go about in this industry. I think it's ironic, in 1948, the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of keeping women from behind the bar. So there was actually a Supreme Court ruling that made it illegal for women to work behind bars. But we had a taste of freedom, and we had a taste of, opportunity. And so there were still women bartenders that were great trailblazers, one of which is Helen Davis, who I have an indirect relation as far as the evolution of my own career with. In 1937, she opened a bar called the Brass Rail in Port Huron, Michigan. Now, in Michigan, as it was in most states, it was illegal for women to not only be behind the bar, let alone own a bar, but she was able to take her case to the Michigan State Court. And because her family was well known, and because they were great entrepreneurs and supporters of the community, she was allowed to open her bar, the Brass Rail, and run her bar. And she ran that bar for 69 years. Now, Helen Davis would have a cousin who would be inspired by her, and her cousin's name is Tony Abou-Ganim. Tony is just one of the most revered people in this industry from a spirits perspective and from a craft cocktail perspective. He would go on to run the beverage program at the Bellagio Hotel, where he took on a mentee, Bridget Albert. 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to study and work with Bridget Albert. And so got Helen Davis to Tony, to Bridget, to myself, and Bridget would go on to inspire many, many other women in this industry. And that all comes out of the link of Prohibition. It's also important to note that until really the late 70s, there were still cities in the United States, Chicago and Los Angeles in particular, in which having a woman work behind the bar was still illegal. A lawyer that I think many of us know, Gloria Allred, this is where her claim to fame was. In 1975 in Los Angeles, she took on a case representing a woman who wanted to work behind the bar and was able to strike down one of the final kind of laws that prevented women from working behind the bar. So very important. That was actually the kickstart of her career. Later, we would have people like Audrey Saunders, Julie Reiner, I mentioned Bridget Albert, who would go on to inspire women through education and through their venues, the Pegu Club and the Clover Club. We would have the creation of Speed Rack, which has been around for quite a few years, I think just shy of 10 years. And Speed Rack shines a light on women in the industry, what we can do. We've seen an evolution of women in this industry that comes from Prohibition, not just from behind the bar, but to entrepreneurship with owning bars, with owning brands, with working for big brands. One of the reasons why I'm so proud to work for Heaven Hill Distillery is really the predominance that women have in our personal business. At Heaven Hill Distillery, we have over 250 women as part of the company. 46 of them are in marketing management roles. Our marketing team at Heaven Hill Distillery actually determines what brands we develop, what we sell, where we sell it. So all those major decisions are being made by women. We have over 46 women in management positions throughout the company. And then we have 4 women that are actually part of our national leadership team, of which there's only about 10 people on. And so women play a huge role at Heaven Hill Distilleries, which is why it's such an honor to be here in front of you all today with the Bourbon Women's Summer Series. So in honor of women and trailblazers, we're going to create a really fantastic cocktail here. One of my favorite classic cocktails is the Collins cocktail. And so a Collins is typically going to be a base spirit, some citrus, a sweet, and an effervescence like a club soda. The most famous of the Collins cocktails are going to be the Tom Collins, which features gin, and the John Collins, which features bourbon. But I think it's time that we had a great, strong woman who, have a cocktail named after her. So we're going to create the Doris Collins. And the Doris Collins is named after Doris Payne. She is one of the most famous and prolific jewel thieves ever in the United States. So I'm going to be featuring Larceny, a brand that was inspired by larceny, and Doris Payne is one of the most famous larcenists in the United States. Her jewel thief career spanned for over 60 years, including a heist that she pulled off where she stole a $500,000 diamond from Monte Carlo that was never recovered. And the police were so embarrassed that they were never able to find the diamond, that charges were never pressed. Out of her 60-year career, she's only spent 5 years in prison, and there's documentaries and books written about her. So she hailed from Atlanta, so we're going to bring a little Atlanta flair into this. The first thing that I'm going to do in this cocktail is I'm going to add a little fresh basil. So you just want to take a couple of leaves, and we're going to put them in the base of our tin here. And then I'm going to squeeze about a ½ ounce of some fresh lemon juice. This is one of my favorite tools to use. This is a hand press. It allows you to work with juice fresh. You don't have to buy anything that's pasteurized. I'm going to take my muddler here and create a little bit of a delicious liquid pesto and just give a couple of turns. What I'm doing is I'm releasing the oils from the basil, and the acid from the lemon juice is going to help extract that as well. So as I mentioned, this is inspired by Doris, and she hailed from Atlanta. So we're going to bring in a little peach nectar. I'm going to use 2 ounces of peach nectar in this cocktail. And what I like about using the peach nectar is I don't have to add any extra sugar. There's going to be some nice sweetness coming from that peach juice. So this is a light, refreshing cocktail. And then we're going to take 2 ounces of our Larceny bourbon. This is a wheated bourbon. It's 70% corn, 20% wheat, 10% barley, so it's got some nice softness to it. This is going to be a blend of 6 to 8-year-old barrels. So some great flavor with there. So I added my 2 ounces of Larceny bourbon. I'm going to set that off to the side. I've already got my tin filled with ice. So we're going to just pour this and give us a really nice shake. I always say that shaking cocktails is the original shake weight. We've got a really nice good froth on there, so we know we've gotten some nice dilution. I'm going to strain the cocktail over ice. I actually like to gently crack my ice for a Collins cocktail, just because it keeps it nice and chilled. It's really refreshing. And so as I mentioned, a Collins needs a little bit of an effervescence. So what I'm going to do is top this off with something unique with a little blood orange soda. So it even starts to look like a peach as it evolves in that glass. I'm just going to take a little fresh peach garnish to the top here. I'm going to get an extra little sprig of basil, give that a nice little gentle tap. The reason why bartenders tap the herbs, whether you're working with basil, mint, or rosemary, when we're working with a cocktail, I talked about those oils when we were muddling it. We want those oils to be released, and that adds to great aromatics for the cocktail. And so in honor of all of the brilliant, trailblazing women in the beverage industry, as well to Miss Doris Payne, I present to you the Doris Collins. It's been a pleasure being able to chat with you all today. Please stay tuned for the live section that's going to follow immediately after this video. I'm going to be announcing a fun little contest that all of you watching can participate. Again, thank you so much. Cheers. And I'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to Lynn House from Heaven Hill Brands. I learned a ton there, Fred. I thought that all of that history about women in bars was so fascinating, especially the connection with Gloria Allred. Who knew? So if you have a thirst for more, I have great news for you, because Lynn House is here with us live in the flesh. I mean, I can't, she's not here with me, but you're here nearby. Lynn, welcome. It is so good to talk with you. Thank you so much for being part of the Bourbon Women Sip Summer series. And I want to know a little bit about, before we get to questions from people who are watching, how did you become interested in the history of women in the industry? I mean, obviously you're in the industry, but
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to track it all.
So I think I mentioned in the video that I was a theater major when I was going to college. It was between two tracks. It was either theater or it was history, because I love history. I've always been a huge history buff. My parents giggled and said, I guess you just don't want to make money. And I'm like, I guess that's right, because neither one of those professions exactly have the best payoff. Right. But I absolutely love history. And as my thirst for this industry and as I delved in and just learning more about it, learning about history and history of this industry tells me a lot to do with what I do now currently in my craft. And so it was just kind of an organic flow for me personally. So.
Well, and it seems like it tracks so closely with the history of the feminist movement. It's the history of women moving into the workforce. It's the history of women claiming their own space, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what we saw happening during Prohibition, as I mentioned, when you look at those statistics and that census, that out of 56,000, just a little over 100 were women.
Right.
And as we got tastes of independence and freedom and entrepreneurship and expressing ourselves, we know as each one of those chapters closed, we didn't want to go back. You know, we didn't want to go back. We wanted to have our own businesses. We wanted to put pride into something we did. And I don't think a lot of people actually realize how the beverage industry was really pivotal for that for women.
Yeah. How do you see women influencing the industry today? And what do you think's coming up in the next several years? What do you see as the trajectory? Do women bring something different to the industry from your perspective at Heaven Hill?
I think that, you know, what women bring to the industry is a couple of things. We are natural multitaskers. Yeah. Right?
Right.
Because we're the caregiver, so we have to caregive and we still have to take care of business. I talked a bit about Tony Abelganum and his aunt, Helen Davis. And one of the things that I love that Tony has said since the first day I met him about 15 years ago, he's like, women are better bartenders because they have better palates. And so what you're seeing happening now in the industry is more and more women are not only behind the bar running beverage programs, sitting at the bar and drinking, actually being invited to drink at the bar, right? Working in all kinds of business, is that we're seeing our flavor palettes and our sensibilities being infused into the industry. And I think that has been a huge change as to what's going on. You know, the misconception, I love what you're doing, that women don't drink whiskey. My mom's from Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I've been drinking whiskey since I was probably about 3 months old.
I knew I liked you, Lynn. I knew I liked you.
But, you know, the misconception that women don't drink this is like, yeah, we do, but you just haven't necessarily invited us to the table. So
there you go. We're going to put that on a T-shirt, Lynn. Like, we've always been here. You just haven't had us at the table.
Always been here. Yeah.
This segues really nicely into one of our questions from our viewers from the whiskey mashup. And if you have a question for Lynn, go ahead and go to YouTube right now. Put that in the chat. We'll bring that in so I can ask her this question. So from the whiskey mashup, the question is, Lynn, who do you feel are some of the most influential women in the industry today? And the second part, this is a two-parter, what are they doing to be on top of that list?
Oh, wow. I mean, from internally within the company that I work with, particularly with whiskey, I look at Susan Wall. Her title's like this long. Essentially, she's the product manager for our whiskey portfolio. And so when you're looking at what the new Parker's Heritage is going to be, and is this what we're going to do for barrel proof, she's got a phenomenal team underneath, but Susan makes that decision at the end of the day. I think from outside of our company, I'm excited with what Fawn Weaver is doing with Uncle Nearest. We actually have the same birthday.
That's a good sign. That's a good thing.
So I'm excited what Fawn is doing to bring new light to a variety of stories. From bartending, Audrey Saunders for me is just the goddess. She Pego Pegu Club, which just closed this year as in part because of COVID, in part because they were going to anyhow. She gave birth to so many bartenders, and then I have to look to someone who was just my personal mentor, which was Bridget Albert.
That's an amazing list. And we would have to give a shout out to a couple of folks related to Bourbon Women. That one you've already mentioned, Fawn Weaver, is just incredible, such an incredible ambassador for bourbon and for the forgotten narratives of bourbon. And she was part of our presentation last night. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention Kate Latz from Heaven Hill, who was a winner of our Bourbon Women Lois Matus Award 2 years ago, I think. So Heaven Hill in particular has had such a great history of bringing in women's palates and ideas, and so what a great company to represent that. Let me get to another quick question, Lynn. This one is from Knows Your Bourbon, N-O-S-E, not Knows Your Bourbon like I know it in my brain. Knows Your Bourbon says, can you shed some light on the barrel selection process for the William Heaven Hill line? So this is someone that's like, tell me about it so I can come and help you. That's what I think that so anybody who's looking for a chance to come in and be part of that process. Can you tell us anything about some of the barrel selection processes?
I can tell you that it is incredibly intense.
Right.
We have, oh my gosh, because we're under construction. So I believe at the moment it's 58 rick houses, and we are warehousing a little over 1.7 million barrels of American whiskey at the moment. And what is unique about the majority of our warehouses is that they're 7 stories, and with the exception of the new ones, they are not temperature controlled. So what we can do is we have 5 major mash bills that we work with, and how they age and what happens to them is going to depend on what rick house they're in and also what floor they're on. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at something like a William Heaven, that select, which is one of our, more limited bourbons, that's going to come from the bottom of a rick house floor. Mm-hmm. And that reason why is because you've got the top floors kind of creating insulation, and there's almost reverse osmosis that happens. And what that does is it allows us to age a whiskey longer without it becoming harsh and sharp. Whereas opposed, we can take that same mash bill and go up to the 7th floor, and that's where Evan Williams is going to come from. So
I don't think there's anything I wouldn't drink on any of those floors. That all sounds like delicious opportunities for good bourbon.
They're all amazing, and there's different experiences that you can have with them. That's what I love about our portfolio. You just want a bourbon and Coke, we've got a bourbon and Coke whiskey. Mm-hmm. You want an old fashioned, we got old fashioned. You want something on the rocks, you want something to sip and savor. There's everything across the board. But it's really, as far as that barrel selection, that's something that is just so intimately done within our company between our distiller, Connor O'Driscoll, and our tasters. And I mentioned Susan Wall earlier. She tastes and decides, is this really what we've held back, releases because it was like, it's not right yet. We could sell it and make money, but it's not right yet. So
that's great for us to hear as consumers, to know that you've got a very clear vision of what this should be like. And so once it's released to market, we know as consumers that it's something that you all are really proud of and happy to put your name on. So that's exciting. Is there anything that you would want us to know about what you are trying or experimenting with these days? Something that we should be trying at home, perhaps?
Well, we are in the process, and I think it's just Fred probably has a bottle.
I'll check. Give me a minute. I'll look around.
The Elijah Craig new double barrel that we have launched, that's going to be limited. It's amazing. It's amazing. I didn't, it's our traditional Elijah Craig, and then it goes through a second a barrel that's kind of a second char process. And it is a completely different animal than the traditional Eliza Craig small batch. We just launched recently the Larceny Barrel Proof.
Yes, I was very excited to hear about that.
Which is amazing. And so what I love about it, it's going to follow on the same line as our Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and the fact that we're going to do 3 releases within a year. So there's an A series, a B series, and a C series. And each one is different because each barrel is different. People don't realize that barrels are like snowflakes. We can put whiskey off the still from the same day in 2 barrels next to each other, go back and taste 2-3 years later, and they're 2 dramatically different whiskeys. So
Right.
when we pick these whiskeys for our barrel selects, we're looking for something super specific. So we're on, I think, the B series now. C series, you'll see an Elijah Craig and Larceny. I don't know what the proofs are because we'll find that out before we kind of do the dump and the blend.
Right.
But it's going to be a different proof each time. With the Elijah Craig, it's always a 12-year. With the Larceny, it's always a 6-year.
Okay.
So that's exciting thing to look for the fall.
Well, good. Well, Lynn, you touched on this a little bit earlier in your discussion about women coming into the bar and that we taste things differently. My favorite thing that Susan Reigler, our past president, has ever taught me is that women have bigger olfactory bulbs than men. So we sense more, we pick up more aroma, we pick up more on the palate. In your years working in the industry, how did you see that play out? Did you see women that would pick up on different notes or ask for different cocktails or ask for different bourbons, for example? How do they experience that differently from what you've seen in your practice?
So from a kind of like a customer standpoint,
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I saw in the beginning when I was getting on the craft side was a lot of people just being told what they needed to experience. Because I said we were just kind of being invited to the table, right? I have a story about when I was bartending and I had a guy sit at the bar and he asked me for a cocktail and he was like, I don't want what you would drink. So I put a vodka soda in front of him. And he was like, what? I was
Fred
like,
just hit the floor, actually. I'm going to have to revive him.
I was like, I drink whiskey, and you said you didn't want what I don't drink, and I don't drink vodka sodas, and and so I think that so many women, from a consumer standpoint, got left out of the conversation, and I think one of the things when I was at Blackbird that I loved this moment. It was a bachelorette party that was in there, and they were all drinking Manhattans, and I was because they had been invited into the conversation and they liked it, and it was like this perception that women don't like whiskey or bourbon or, rye, scotches. I'm like, I don't know where that came from or why that continues to be. So from a consumer standpoint, I saw more and more people, hey, lead me on the experience because I want to learn more. I want to know more. From my own perspective, I had some interesting occasions when we'd go to tastings and I would point out things like, I get blood orange. They're like, yeah, there's orange. I'm like, no, but it's particularly blood orange,
Yes. Yeah,
That
there's a difference in all those orange flavors, right?
Yeah. And that what I think is because we are, by design geared to raise children and whatever, we have to be able to taste food and know what's safe, what's not safe, whatever, it all to me is a big circle that ties in together. And so, I had people and they go back, they're like, oh, you're right, it is blood orange. I'm like, so.
There's so much there to unpack, Lynn, everything from, what we can detect, from aroma and smell to being able to sort of stand your ground and say, no,
exactly.
I said what I said, right? I said it's blood orange. Lynn, we got just a couple of seconds left. Any parting shots for us? Anything that you would want our bourbon women who are watching tonight to know?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this. It's been a great honor. I love what you're doing. Everyone got to watch me make the Doris Collins tonight. I'm sipping one alongside with you. and the recipe was posted. I believe it was put out on the website as well.
Right.
So I'm wearing this really cute Heaven Hill bottled and bond. I'm in love with this. I just got it yesterday. Kind of zip shirt. And so we just want to offer for the first 10 people who want to recreate their own Doris Collins, share with me on Instagram at Liquid Lady Lynn. There's no E, so Lynn. So Liquid Lady Lynn and Heaven Hill Distilleries, those two Instagram sites. Share with us your Doris Collins that you're making home. We'll raise a glass, and the first 10 people who do that will be awarded one of these really awesome zip-ups as well.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, if you didn't catch that, make sure that you make your Doris Collins and tag Lynn, tag Heaven Hill Distilleries. Lynn House, it has been a delight, a pleasure. We are so glad to call you a friend of Bourbon Women. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Carrie. Cheers.
Cheers to you. We'll see you soon.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Man, if I had any fresh basil, I'd be running out to make that cocktail right now. I need that shirt.
I so want that cocktail.
Right? And, I told Lynn she had me at basil. I mean, once you put that in, I'm ready. You can just open up the bottle and stick some leaves in there. That might beat a mint julep some days, right? So go make your Doris Collins. Get yourself a cool Heaven Hill t-shirt. And, while you're thinking about it, while you're thinking about stuff you need to buy, don't forget our e-auction ends tonight at 10. There's some amazing offerings on there, and I definitely don't want you to miss out. So if you haven't been on there yet, make sure that you check that out. And if I can, I don't want to say it from memory, bourbonwomen.org/SIP Summer Series, and that will take you there. So go look for the e-auction. Thank you also for our sponsors, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, that's DISCUS for short, and thank you so much for your support of Bourbon Women. And also make sure you visit spiritsunited.org to take action. That's the advocacy group that is working for the furthering of the goals of the industry. So if you haven't been there yet, visit spiritsunited.org. And thank you also for supporting Bourbon Women and the SIP Summer Series. It's going to be hard to top Lynn, but...
Well, that is true. And I do want to point out that we did have I put her Instagram up, and there's no E on the end of that. So this is her Instagram up now. So if you want to make that cocktail, that's Lynn's Instagram. Go take a screen capture of that, make that cocktail, and tag her.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you doing? I mean, you're here to learn about bourbon. You might as well make a cocktail. Just turn the volume up on your iPad while you walk away. Go make that cocktail. I definitely want to see that. So I'm going to be watching the Instagram in between breaks here and see how we're doing. Are we ready to move on? Because we have so much more content to get through this evening, and I don't want you all to miss a minute of it. If you are a fan of the magical way that smoke and whiskey can work together, then Maggie Kimberl and Susan Reigler are the people that you need to meet. Susan Reigler, of course, is the immediate past president of Bourbon Women and basically the bourbon freaking genius. Is that the official term? Bourbon freaking genius?
Susan is just the most intelligent person. She's
right.
Amazing.
Right. And a biologist, and has very cool beetle pins every time I see her. I mean, she contains multitudes. You're going to love learning from her and from Maggie Kimberl, who is a bourbon amazeballs expert in her own right. So sip and smokes and craft whiskey industry trends with Susan Reigler and Maggie Kimberl. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Susan Reigler with the Bourbon Women Association. It is my great pleasure to be speaking today with Maggie Kimberl. Maggie is a bourbon writer, a whiskey writer, journalist. She has been on the whiskey reporting scene for many, many years now. In fact, you wouldn't know she'd been on it for as long. She looks much younger than that, but she's definitely a pro. She has many fields of expertise within the bourbon world, including having a pretty fine hand at pairing bourbon and cigars. And she's going to talk a little bit about that today, about some trends in the bourbon industry. And it's just a really super fun to be able to chat with Maggie about all these topics today. So welcome, Maggie.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be talking to everybody today. And so you want to talk about bourbon and cigar pairings a little bit first.
We could do that, yeah.
That is probably one of the most fun things to talk about at a festival. I've done classes at festivals all over the United States, teaching bourbon and cigar pairing philosophy. I'm going to make it really easy for the folks at home because it's obviously not a full experience like you would get at an in-person festival. But, we have to kind of run down a little bit of the philosophy first. Okay. So when you approach pairing whiskey and cigars, the first thing you have to think about is balance. A lot of times when you go into a cigar bar, you'll say, how do I pair this cigar with this whiskey? Or how do I pair, how do I choose? And they'll say, oh, well, pair a full-bodied cigar with a full-bodied whiskey or a light-bodied cigar with a light-bodied whiskey. And I heard that so many times, I just thought, well, that's not right. That doesn't seem right at all. So I started to do a little investigating myself. And what I found was you really want to strike a balance. You want to find complementary flavors, complementary profiles, things that really balance each other out and complement each other. So I started to go through this whole process of, trying to find the right cigars with the right whiskeys, American whiskeys mostly. I've done a little bit of Canadian whiskey and I think one or two scotches, but it's mostly American whiskey that I work with, which is a really hard one because, with us aging most of our spirits in new charred oak barrels, that's a very bold and flavorful product, regardless of the mash bill.
Right.
So it can be somewhat of a challenge. One of the anomalies that I've found with our mutual friend Michael Veach, I've done a lot of this pairing work, and one of the interesting things we found is Four Roses Yellow Label, that standard Four Roses bottle, is one of the things that pairs the best with the widest variety of cigars. And one of the reasons we think that is because, as you know, that Four Roses Yellow Label is a combination of all 10 of the recipes that Four Roses makes. So we think it has something to do with the fact that there's a lot of flavor profiles to pull out from there.
It's also fascinating that that's only an 80 proof bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, it's pretty light, but it's just so full of all those different elements.
Absolutely. And that's another one of the things that we find, as you go up in proof, it's a little bit harder to find the right cigar to pair with it because it will be overpowering. So if you stick with, 80, 90 to 100 proof, you're going to have a lot better options and a lot better of an experience. So when people are pairing whiskey and cigars, one of the things I want them to do is pick a lineup of whiskeys to go with whatever cigar you choose. So I usually start off with a wheater like Maker's Mark. I will do a standard, classic bourbon profile like a Jim Beam Black.
Okay.
And then that Four Roses for something that's a little bit higher in rye content, a little bit spicier. And that gives you a whole palette to choose from. When you're pulling out those flavors that you're experiencing in your cigar, that gives you a lot more opportunity to match it up against different flavor profiles, if that makes sense.
It does. And do you get the same thing from pairing with cigars that you would say bourbon with food, that sometimes a cigar will reveal an element in the bourbon that you didn't taste on its own, and the other way around, that
Absolutely.
the bourbon really brings out some more flavors in your cigar?
Absolutely. And,
Cool.
It's very similar. Whenever you're pairing whiskey and cigars, whiskey and food, whiskey and cheese particularly, it just kind of opens up a whole new world. So some of the things for you all to try at home is with that bottle of Four Roses Yellow Label, you can try, there's a company called L'Atelier that makes a line called Surrogates. Both the Seventh Sam and the Animal Cracker go really well with that Four Roses. Black Label Trading Company's Killer Bee, Dunbarton Umbagog, which should be pretty easy to find. Drew Estate and Caldwell collaboration, the All Out Kings Give Me Your Lunch Money, is a funny name for a cigar, but a great one to pair with that Four Roses. Ashton Cigars La Aroma de Cuba Mi Amor is another really great one. The Padron Aniversario 1964, or the Drew Estate Liga Underground Grand Toro. Those are some options that, you'll just have to go into your local tobacconist and say, do you have any of these? And, that's kind of where to start your journey on that.
Okay, well, that's really fascinating. That sounds like a wonderful way to spend some time as you're at home and maybe out on your porch or.
Absolutely.
That
We all have a
sounds
little
great.
bit more free time these days, don't we?
We
And
do.
that's a nice hobby to take up, and just take some notes and keep track of, what you like, what you don't like, what you're experiencing, and that'll give you something to go on the next time and the next time and the next time.
Exactly. And you'll find what's to your taste.
Absolutely.
Because you just can't tell somebody what they're going to like.
Absolutely.
Only they know what they're going to like.
That's right. I like to tell people I'm teaching you the process. I'm not telling you what to think. I'm teaching you the process, and I want you to take this process and I want you to tell me you're wrong because this is what I found.
Right. Well, I know that you've done a lot of writing for, well, actually, American Whiskey Magazine. You're content editor for that. And,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
that's very cool. Full disclosure, I send Maggie some of my copy from time
She
to
does.
time. Yes, and you don't slash and hack too badly on it either, I must say. So,
No,
so thank you for
I've
that.
I've really enjoyed working with you on that. I think
Thank you.
that it's been a really fun journey that we've been on, launching that magazine since summer 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago now.
And we've had a lot of fun, and we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, and part of the ground that you've covered in that is you've done a lot of craft distilleries and talking about the craft industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and sort of could you talk a little bit about the place of the craft distilleries and the whole picture of the bourbon and whiskey industry? And I guess you could start with Kentucky and then maybe move out through the U.S. where you
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
there's a real growth in craft, and what are they doing that's a little different and
Sure.
fun?
Yeah.
That'd be
So the craft industry is really interesting to watch because you have the major players that have been doing this for generations, and then you have these newer places that have opened up, and these are some of the most passionate people across the industry. Regardless of the size of the distillery, these are some of the most passionate people you'll ever find in a workplace. When you get into the craft whiskey industry in Kentucky, these are people who said, I have a story that I want to tell, or I have a family connection that I want to explore. And, they do some really fun and interesting things to add to the whiskey conversation. And a lot of them are saying, I don't want to compete with Kentucky bourbon. I want to add my own thing to the conversation.
I've had somebody say to me, one of the craft people say to me, Jimmy Russell sure knows what he's doing, and I'm not out to compete with Jimmy Russell or to replicate what
Right.
Jimmy Russell is doing at Wild Turkey, because that's a classic.
Absolutely.
And definitely I want to carve my own niche here.
Absolutely.
And-
And you're seeing a lot of experimentation. So like at MB Roland, for example, they're doing fire-cured corn.
And they have
which
that
is,
little hut.
Yeah,
it's
and
great.
I mean,
like
you know,
a
and
little
so
corn smokehouse.
yeah, so it's like a corn. Yeah, exactly. It's a corn smokehouse, and they're making the bourbon out of this, and that smokiness definitely carries over into their
I love
into
it.
their corn whiskeys
Yeah.
and their whiskey products.
They
And
call it the dark fired.
yeah, the dark
Dark fired, I think.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And then you have places like Jep the Creed and Castle and Key, where they're using heirloom varietals of corn. Those are the things that are not really economically viable on a larger scale. When you're talking about heirloom varietals of corn, these are very expensive to grow. They require a lot more maintenance than your standard yellow dent number 2. And so when you have these distilleries using their Bloody Butcher corn or their Hickory King corn or their Hickory Cane corn and bringing back that heritage of heirloom varietals of corn
Right.
that were grown in Kentucky 100, 150, 200 years ago, you know, that's really adding to the conversation. So
Are some people trying to capture some wild yeast too?
Oh,
So
yeah,
what
that's a
they
great
have,
point.
you know,
Yeah.
kind
So
of
they're-
in their little area. So.
there are a lot of people who are trying to capture wild yeast. There's a whole science behind yeast. And we have, again, here in Kentucky, the folks down at Firm Solutions are pretty much the masters of yeast. And they can go into a shuttered distillery and take some scrapings and see if they can propagate something from that. So that's one of the things that people are doing. I believe they did that at Castle and Key when they were trying to get it up off the ground running because they wanted to try to capture that same yeast varietal or that same yeast strain
think
that was
it
being
didn't
used.
work,
It did
unfortunately.
not work in that case.
Right.
But a lot of people are capturing the wild yeast that is endemic to that area where their distillery is. And there's a lot of thinking that those native yeast strains will add something, you know, like a
terroir.
Yeah, a terroir,
Yeah,
or
instead of
like
from
a
the soil, it's coming from the
geographic
air, yeah.
footprint
Yeah.
of their distillery
Yeah.
into their final product.
Right.
So, and that's actually happening outside of Kentucky as well.
Mm-hmm.
Both the heirloom corn and the trying to capture wild yeast.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alan Bishop up at Spirits of French Lick has been capturing wild yeast and propagating it. And, down in Texas, there is a distillery called Treaty Oak where they have a miller on site who has been bringing back local varietals of heirloom corn in that area. So one of the ones that he was bringing back when I was down there visiting was a Oaxacan green. And that was something that had almost gone completely extinct. And he found the
that's
last like
fascinating.
10 pounds of seed stock of this Oaxacan green corn, planted it in the middle of a huge plot of land so that it wouldn't be cross-pollinated, and was able to turn that seed stock into something he could then send out to other farms to grow.
Yeah, and in fact, I think I know about it. There is a farm distiller in Minnesota who is using some Oaxacan green. So I
Yeah.
suspect that's where he got it.
Probably,
Yeah.
probably so.
Yeah.
And so, when you kind of zoom out into the craft distilling scene in the entire United States, you're seeing a lot of people who are wanting to add kind of their regional flair to their products or tell their regional stories. So I was recently on the cover of this magazine here, you can see Westward Whiskey. And that's where I was last in January before the pandemic hit.
Oops.
And they are doing something really interesting. So they're doing an actual, an American single malt, but they're doing it because you can't really grow corn in the Pacific Northwest. So if they were going to get corn, they would have to truck it in from the Midwest. And they said, that wouldn't be authentic for us.
Mm-hmm.
So they all came from brewing backgrounds, and they wanted to take their brewing background and turn that into a really good, clean, American style, American single malt.
Uh-huh.
And they've done a fabulous job with it. And that's all they do is American single malt. And,
Wow.
and I think they do a little bit of rum as well.
Oh, okay.
But American
still,
single malt,
well, that's fascinating. And I think, kind of to that point, I know of Santa Fe Spirits in New Mexico.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, they make a single malt, and instead of using peated malt,
Right.
as in burning peat,
Oh,
which
they're
you would
doing
in Scotland,
the smoke with the
mesquite.
Mesquite,
They
that's
use
right.
mesquite.
That's where I
It's
heard of them.
absolutely dynamite. It is so good. And
so-
unfortunately, you can only get it in New Mexico. But there you
Right,
go.
but it's good that you bring that up because another point is with the American single malt, people are kind of falling into these regional styles or developing these regional styles. So when you go to the Southwest, you're going to find a lot of different options for mesquite smoked malt. And then you have the people who are wanting to make Scotch style in the United States, people who are wanting to make beer style American single malts. And there are just all these different, and then there's a distillery in Virginia, Copper Fox. Rick Wassman is smoking with different fruit woods, so peach wood, cherry wood, that sort of thing. So he has his own malting floor, his own smoke house. I don't know what you call that actually.
Well, the drying house.
The drying house,
Yeah.
yes. And so he's actually using different kinds of fruit woods to smoke that malt, and it really carries over nicely into that finished product.
Yeah.
So wherever you go, American single malt is probably one of the most interesting categories to watch in the craft distilling industry outside of Kentucky, because, a lot of the distilleries outside of Kentucky are saying, I don't want to make a Kentucky style whiskey. I wanna
Kentucky's making it.
Yeah, they already made it. They already did a
Right.
good job. We like that.
Yeah.
That's why we started doing this.
And one other thing they're using, and this is fascinating, is going back to the pot still technology.
Absolutely, yeah. Pot stills are very popular in craft distilleries. They are a little bit trickier to run. So if you're going to be producing on a smaller scale, it makes a little bit more sense to use that pot still as opposed to a column still. If you're doing anything on an economy of scale, obviously anything you can do to kind of take a lot of the guesswork out of it is going to help your bottom line and help your end product.
Right.
But, using a pot still is kind of an art. You have to know when to cut out the heads, the hearts, the tails. And you can end up with not a great product if you're not absolutely sure what you're doing.
It takes a
It's
lot
not-
of practice.
It absolutely
Yeah.
does. It's not foolproof.
Yeah. But I know I did a story about Vendome, of course, makes the stills based here in Louisville, and they've been really quite fascinated by their uptick in pot still orders. You know, they're
Oh,
doing
yeah.
far, far more than they used to. And
I believe it.
Yeah.
And one of the funny things that they told me the last time I was talking to them as well, they've had an uptick in people ordering a still, and then when it comes time to get it delivered, they say, actually, we're going to need a bigger still. So go ahead and make a bigger one.
Wow.
So, before people even open, they realize that there's this market there where
Right.
they're going to be able to tap into that and, get something amazing
Yeah.
going.
And they tend to stay regional because, of course, again, you're talking about they can't possibly make as much as a Beam or
Right.
a Wild Turkey or a Four Roses or a Brown Foreman. They're just
Right.
not set up to do that, and that's not even what they want to do. That I remember visiting a tiny little distillery. It was truly tiny. Glacier Distilling outside of Glacier National Park in Montana.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And they only sell 375 milliliter bottles, and they're about like this, and
Wow.
and they're really, really good. And they do a variety of styles of whiskey, and they even do a huckleberry infused gin.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is, because huckleberries are everywhere in Montana. That's sort of the state fruit. And it was really cool because it was so small and you can only kind of buy it within this certain mile radius of the distillery. But it was just truly excellent. And I thought, wow, what fun just to visit these places and get the local character.
Those are always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I find when I travel and visit these distilleries. There are a lot of people trying to kind of infuse that regional flavor into their products. So up at the Traverse City Whiskey Company,
Oh, yeah.
they make a cherry flavored whiskey. And instead of it being, an artificial cherry flavoring that they're adding to it,
Right.
Traverse City is the cherry capital of the United States. So they're actually using cherries from the orchards, and I think actually their family's orchards,
Wow.
maybe even, and they're infusing that into their whiskey that they're making. So the end result there is a cherry whiskey that I actually recommend to people because it's not artificial and it doesn't taste like it came out of a chemistry set. So it's really
They also will sell jars of
their cocktail cherries
their
are
cherries. They're
phenomenal.
so good.
Phenomenal.
You can get them on the internet.
Yeah, they're some of the best that I've ever had.
Yeah.
And that was actually what drew me to them because I saw somebody in Traverse City is making cocktail cherries, and I said, well, that's obviously where the good cherries come from, so I
Sure.
want to try that. And then I ended up going up there and visiting the distillery and found out, oh, hey, they actually make good whiskey too.
Yeah. No, they make lovely whiskey.
I love their rye whiskey. They have fantastic rye whiskey.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So what do you think, I unfortunately read a lot about how, of course, the craft distilleries are struggling right now because, a lot of them did switch over to hand sanitizer, but that doesn't get you
Right.
very far. And obviously tourism, that's dried up for people. And
Right.
Do you think they're going to make it? Do you think we're going to see a lot of them shut down?
Unfortunately, we're already starting to see some craft distilleries shut down. Not in Kentucky yet that we know of, but we are seeing some distilleries outside of Kentucky shutting down because, yes, you're right, that a lot of them did switch over to making hand sanitizer. A lot of them were unsure of the legalities of it and did not. And like you said, the tourism is a major driver of supporting those distilleries.
Right.
And when tourism dried up, it kind of just meant that the majority of their business dried up. And that was really unfortunate. So within the Commonwealth of Kentucky right now, as far as I know, and I actually talked to Eric Gregory, the president of the KDA, about this the other day, and he said as far as he knows, none of our craft distilleries in Kentucky have had to close down because of the pandemic yet.
Good.
And
Exactly.
but
we have a wood bar here, not a metal one.
yeah. Outside of Kentucky is another story, unfortunately, because, in Kentucky we really have something special in the bourbon industry because it doesn't matter what size distillery you have. If you're here and you're running a distillery, you're surrounded by people who want to take you into the fold and make you a part of the greater whiskey family. And, people really support each other. It's a lot of industries say that. I think in the Kentucky bourbon industry, I can assure you people are actually out there supporting each other. And so, that bodes well for the future of the craft whiskey industry in Kentucky. Elsewhere in the United States, it's going to be a struggle. We're going to see probably a few more go out of business, a few more struggle to get back on their feet. But, they all have tremendous support from their communities. And that's really what makes the difference is when you have a very local distilling culture that is supported by that community, that's where you have the best shot of surviving.
Yeah, a lot of them, especially I think in smaller towns, they have become social hubs for the
Absolutely.
towns.
Yeah,
They'll
they're-
have concerts, they'll have musical nights, they'll have tastings. They might have a little cafe, and it's really turned into like a community center.
Absolutely, and that was I've experienced that a lot actually in my travels. Treaty Oak was probably one of the standouts in Dripping Springs, Texas. They have a restaurant, a food truck, live music. They would have vendors come and set up and sell like clothing and jewelry and stuff like that. They had a cigar trailer in a vintage Airstream that would come out on the weekends.
How fun! Okay.
And so, they just made it, it's right outside of Austin. It's about 45 minutes outside of Austin. And they just made it a destination for all those Austinites who wanted to head out for a Friday night or a Saturday night and, have a drink at the bar, have some dinner at the restaurant, and hang out and watch the band.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Well, I wish all of them well. I hope that
As
they
do
make
I.
it. They make it. And what will you be up to next, Maggie?
Well, that is to be determined. Right now, who knows what anybody's going to be up to next. The magazines are starting to finally come back online, which is great.
Right.
We had a little bit of a lull there for a while. But yeah, I am always going to be doing what I want to do, and that is tell the story of the most passionate people that I've ever met and how they have found a place for themselves in this industry.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank
This
you
has
for
been
having
delightful.
me.
Thanks so much, Maggie.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I know we'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Bit of a lull there for a while. But yeah, I am always gonna
Maggie and Susan, we are delighted to have enjoyed your fine expertise on sips and smokes and whiskeys. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me introduce to you Susan Reigler and Maggie Kimberl. Thank you all for joining us. How are you all doing tonight?
Doing terrific.
Oh, great.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a treat to talk with both of you. I was singing both of your praises before we went to the video, and it appears that you have covered nearly every aspect that people had questions about for our sips and smokes, because our YouTube comments were about lots of other things besides just smokes. But tell me what was fun in preparing for this conversation that you all just wrapped up.
I think we always have fun whenever we get a chance to talk about whiskey, and especially whiskey and cigars. I don't know about you, Susan, but it's always a really fun topic to approach. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And while I might only have about one cigar a year these days, I'm on the lookout. I'm going to get your list from you, Maggie, so I can enjoy that one to the fullest, I think.
Absolutely. I might have something really special I can drop by.
Ooh,
So just
all right. And you know where I live, so hooray.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is the
as long as
benefit.
we have a little bit. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say this is just the benefit of being here in Louisville. For all these poor folks that are watching all over the country, they're like, I want to live down the street from Maggie Kimberl. I mean,
Yeah, we'd love to have you, honestly. It's
Right.
a pretty great place, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. It's a good concentration of bourbon and bourbon lovers, that's for sure.
for sure. Maggie,
Which
I
is
didn't
why we
mean to
have
interrupt you. Go
symposiums
ahead.
every year.
Oh, no. Well, I wanted to, as long as we had a few minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the basic cigar stuff. So one of the things is, what do you light a cigar with? So a lot of people will use, like whatever kind of lighting implement that they have, and there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. So the preferred method is going to be a torch or a micro torch. You can also use wooden cigar matches. Those are different from your Strike Anywhere matches. The Strike Anywhere matches have some chemicals in the tip to help them be able to be struck anywhere, and that would impart some kind of yucky flavors into your cigar. You also don't want to light your cigar off of a candle or, like one of those bug tikis or some tiki torches or whatever. That also will kind of make it taste like bug goo. You don't want that.
What
The
about
other thing-
the burning, the rolled up and burning $100 bill? Is that a really good way to light your cigar?
When you have those extra $100 bills, definitely
it.
call me. I'll over with the good cigars, and I'll bring the camera. We'll document the whole experience.
Oh my gosh.
That
I had
sounds
one quick
great.
question
I'm not
from
sure that's gonna
YouTube.
happen.
One quick question from YouTube to share with you all from Millie O'Donnell. She said she typically smokes smaller cigars, and so she wanted to know what would pair well with a sweeter smoke.
So it's all about balance. If you're going to have something that's a little bit sweeter, you want to go with something a little bit bigger and bolder, maybe something with a lot of rye, maybe even a rye whiskey. You just really want to be able to set up a flight. That's what I always recommend. Set up a flight. So I would do a flight of, really big, bold whiskeys. Start off around 100 proof or below, just so you don't kind of blow out your palate while you're doing that. But I would recommend something a little bit bigger and bolder.
Excellent. Well, Maggie, Susan, we couldn't thank you enough. Thank you for joining us. And for all of you at home, make your list now of what your flight will be to get started with Sips and Smokes. And say thanks to Maggie and Susan on all of your social media platforms. Thank you so much, ladies. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having us on.
Take care.
Absolutely. I want to make a quick comment based on your YouTube questions. Of course, men can come to Symposium. Yes. You will be way outnumbered, but I guarantee you will enjoy the company. All these smart women who like bourbon. Yes, everybody should come. You can come. Everybody can come as long as you're 21 years old. One of the reasons to come to Symposium is because of the long-standing relationships we have with the industry. And one of our longest and dearest friends have been those at Michter's Distillery. And I am thrilled that Andrea Wilson and Carrie Casler will be joining us next to talk about the 6 philosophies of Michter's. You're going to enjoy this. Take a look.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Wilson, Master of Maturation for Michter's Distillery. I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Kerri Casler, who's the bar manager for the bar at Fort Nelson in beautiful downtown Louisville. Welcome to all bourbon women and all bourbon women friends. We're really excited to talk about Michter's tonight, talk about our 6 philosophies that make Michter's Michter's, and also make the beautiful summer smash, which I'm super excited about. Kerri's going to walk us through that whole process, and hopefully everybody at home or wherever you are has selected the fresh ingredients that they want to use from the recipe that we sent out prior. So let's get started. I thought maybe we would start with a little bit of history about Michter's and then talk through the 6 philosophies. And then as we make the cocktail, we'll kind of go back and reference some of those things, because I think Kerri has some really important insights to share as a bartender and the utilization of Michter's in your cocktail. So the history of the brand started in 1753 in Schaefferstown, Pennsylvania. It was started by a gentleman, John Schenck. Mid-1800s, it sold to Abraham Baumberger. Then later, it closed during Prohibition, that fateful time in U.S. history. And then it was picked up in the 50s by a gentleman, Lou Foreman. And Lou Foreman had 2 sons, Michael and Peter, and it was the joining of their 2 names that ended in the result of the name Michter's. So kind of a cool little heritage story for us and the brand name. Sadly, though, the distillery closed in 1989 and no more Michter's was being made. Today, we're a family-owned business. We're owned by the Malioco family. The Maliocos acquired the abandoned trademark in the 90s, and they started rebuilding this brand. We've been through 3 phases. The first phase of operation was literally going around the landscape of Kentucky and selecting some beautiful old barrels that they felt were of the flavor and style they would like Michter's to someday become. The second phase was going to a great Kentucky distillery and asking to produce on our behalf, because we didn't yet have the financial resources to build all of our assets. Did that for a long time, and then the third phase was the full build out of our facility in the Shively section of Louisville, Kentucky. We have a beautiful column still operation and pot still doubler operation here. We also have 145 acres in Springfield, Kentucky. where we're growing estate-grown grains that we hope to do something fun with in the future. And we opened the Fort Nelson Distillery in downtown Louisville, where we were able to acquire our old legendary pot still system from the facility in Pennsylvania, as well as the cypress wood fermenters. And it's also where the beautiful bar at Fort Nelson is housed. And I'm gonna let Kerri, introduce that to you in just a minute. But I thought for a second I would talk about the 6 philosophies of Michter's. So first of all, Michter's is a small batch or single barrel product. Small batch for us means literally our tanks are sized to the equivalent of 20 full barrels. It's incredibly small, but it's tremendously important to us because the attention to detail and the discipline of producing consistently at that small of a volume is something that we're incredibly proud of. And it's a testament to the quality of our processes every step along the way. So we're very proud to be able to offer a small batch or a single barrel product. We also start with naturally seasoned and air dried wood for at least 18 months, sometimes up to 5 years. Now, the purpose of that, the wood sits outside, it naturally air dries, seasons, grows microflora, starts to break the wood down to get rid of the undesirable characteristics that we don't want in the final product of Michter's, but also to expose some of the beautiful compounds that we do want to extract from the wood. Then we're going to toast the wood. The toasting is the art of slow heating the wood. So a lot of people know charring, the barrel going up in flames, and it's all super cool. But the toasting art is by heating at different temperatures for different amounts of time, then you can really extract more different compounds from the wood that are specific to your individual product. There are hundreds of different toasting profiles that you can access that will yield different compounds from the wood. Then we finalize the whole process with charring, and then we're ready to enter the spirit into wood. When we enter into wood, we're going to enter at low entry proof. We enter in at 103 proof into the barrel. That's very low considering that US law allows us to enter into wood up to 125 proof. That low entry proof means we're about 75% whiskey in the barrel. We're about 25% water. All that water is a powerful hydrolyzer for a lot of beautiful barrel chemistry. You just think about some of the things we're going to do today. I'm using a simple syrup made with sugar and water. Very simple ingredient to dissolve. Same thing with wood sugars. The more water you have in that barrel, the more those sugars are going to dissolve. Reaction chemistry is going to happen. It's going to be beautiful. Conversely, if we were to enter at higher proof, we're going to come out of wood higher, and we're going to be about 90% whiskey in the barrel, 10% water, and you're not going to get the richer experience because when you come out of wood, you're at higher proof, you're going to add a lot more water. With Michter's, we add over 50% less water at bottling than we would if we would have gone into wood at 125 proof. So essentially, all of that said, you get a full body whiskey experience with more whiskey in the bottle, which is important to us and important for consumers when you're spending your hard-earned money on it. Then one of the things that we do while the barrel is aging, we're going to heat cycle. So in the winter months, we're going to heat up the warehouse, which in turn increases the liquid temperature inside the barrel. As a result of that, the vapor pressure changes. That pushes the whiskey into the capillaries of the wood. We're going to hold there for a period of time, and then we're going to start to naturally cool down, which the cooling down process then releases that whiskey, allows it to pull color, flavor, and aroma as it moves back to the center of the cask. Then finally, when we're ready to go to the dump floor, typically our core range of products, Michter's bourbon, rye, American whiskey, and sour mash whiskey, are all going to be between 5 to 7 years old. And that's part of our quality statement is we bottle when the whiskey's ready. We don't necessarily, oh, it's 4 years old, go to the bottling line. We're all about quality here at Michter's, and we choose things based on their quality of readiness to go to the bottling line. We're gonna dump those barrels, then we're gonna chill filter them. And it's not just any chill filtration. Every single Michter's product that we make, and you can see many of them on the shelf behind me, we actually custom chill filter every single product. So we take the time to understand the whiskey that took years to develop in the barrel, and we create a chill filtration protocol that's specific to that whiskey that allows us to showcase all the quality that that product has to offer and really accentuate its best characteristics. So those are the 6 philosophies of Michter's that make us who we are. And now I'm very excited to start learning how to make my very own summer smash. I have chosen the peaches and the mint, and I'm going to turn it over to Kerri Casler and let her walk us through how to make the summer smash.
Hey everyone, I'm Carrie, the bar manager at the bar at Fort Nelson, and I'm going to walk you through the summer smash. So a little bit of the history of the smash and just some information on it. So the smash falls somewhere between a whiskey sour and a mint julep, and it can trace its origins back to 1862, where Jerry Thomas, who is a very famous barman in this industry, he originated the julep, which is part of the reason why Andrea picked her smash ingredients, because the original julep was mint, sugar, water, brandy, and peach. And the interesting thing is that a smash is a julep, but a julep isn't always a smash. And kind of how, you know, whiskey and bourbon, we have that same philosophy with that. So the definition of a julep is it's going to be liquor, sweet flavor, and water. So where the smash will differ is there's the addition of fruit into that. So that's why the basis for the smash is a julep, but we add that addition of fruit in there. And the nice thing about it is that it allows you to be creative. It also allows you to clean out your fridge, because you can combine anything that you're interested in or anything that you have lying around to make a smash. And it is definitely a fantastic summer drink. It's incredibly seasonal. So the basic elements of a smash, and as with any cocktail, the origins are always somewhat vague, and they have gone through many evolutions throughout the decades, and they also cross the lines of different spirits. So in order to have a smash, you need a spirit base. Originally it was bourbon, and in our case it will be bourbon, but any spirit base. And then you will need an herb, sugar of some sort, any type of sweetener is okay. And then of course the seasonal fruit. And that's the beauty of this, is that the seasonal fruit is open-ended, and it's very important. You can make a smash, even though it's a wonderful summer sipper, you can make a smash in the wintertime with cranberries or persimmons, and you can make it in the summertime with blueberries, or as Andrea has, peaches. So that's what kind of makes it fun, is that a smash is completely open to interpretation, and it's seasonally flexible, which makes it a lot of fun for any time. And also, while mint is the most traditional herb used, you can use any aromatic. So even if it's an autumn smash, you could put cinnamon in there, anything that you'd like. So that's what I love about this cocktail, is that it opens you up to so much creativity. It's flexible, it's forgiving, it's made with whatever you have on hand, and in my opinion, it's great for the summertime. So what we will do is we will start with our glass, of course, and there are 2 ways to mix this drink. Of course, not everybody has a shaker tin on hand. You can use any closed container, or you can simply smash the fruit in a glass. Now, some people will strain out the fruit and aromatics. I prefer to smash them in the glass or in the shaker and leave them, because those flavors stay around a little bit more, and you have a little bit more of that richness when you do it. So if you're using something like a berry, just a rough estimate is about a handful. If you're using something that is a full fruit, I would say a half of that fruit. So Andrea, about a half of a peach.
Okay.
And Andrea's method is going to be the shaker tin method, and mine is going to be the muddle method, just so you can kind of get an idea of both. And then you'll take your aromatic, and again, that's what's beautiful about this cocktail is that it's completely open to interpretation. If you love your herb, you know, you use more. Originally, they were very specific about how you made a smash or a julep, and they were very specific about 12 mint leaves. But of course, we are now at the point where we just, you know, kind of throw in a handful or a couple pieces. So you'll select your, yeah.
Carrie, I keep the skin on this. Is that
Absolutely, because there are flavors in there as well that, you know, lend itself to the cocktail.
all right? Okay, in you go, peach. All right.
And I've added my basil, and because I am not shaking my cocktail, I am going to muddle. But because Andrea is shaking her cocktail, she does not have to muddle because the ice is going to do that work for her.
All right, so I have to talk about this mint. So this
Yes.
beautiful mint is sourced from Nelson Family Agriculture. And the reason why that's important is Nick Nelson is a good friend of ours. He works for us in the winter time, and they're the sole supplier of mint for the Derby. So one of the other reasons I chose the peach and the mint is because Kentucky Derby is right around the corner. I know it's a little crazy this year because it's in September, but super excited about this. Oh my gosh, it smells so good.
Yeah, it was very fragrant.
All right, so 12 leaves, I understand.
I usually just throw a handful in. Also, one thing to remember is when you're using something like mint is it's usually best to take the stem off. You just want those leaves. The stem can sometimes make it a little bitter. And it's something that, you know, you don't really want, you know, when you take a sip of to have this big stem coming at you. So usually we will tear the leaves from the stem.
All right. Got my 12 leaves I've put in there.
And then this is just somewhat of a side note. The reason that bartenders, and you can take this into your home bar, the reason that we build cocktails the way that I'm showing you right now is if you put the alcohol in first and then you make a mistake, you've wasted the priciest component of your cocktail. So,
don't want to do that. That's a no-no.
You always want to put your alcohol in last in case you've made a misstep, because if you have to throw it out and start over, you don't want to be throwing out bourbon. So there's just a little side note into the mind of a bartender why you'll always see them add the alcohol last for that very reason. So next what we're going to do is we are going to add our citrus.
Okay.
Now, traditionally a smash is lemon, mint, and sugar along with your whiskey or bourbon. But again, as cocktails have evolved, you can use any fruit that you'd like, but you always do want that citrus component in it. Now, a lot of people will muddle the citrus in there. I feel like it's too bulky and it's not necessary, so I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze. Now, you wanna add about a ½ ounce of citrus, which if you don't have that measuring implement at home, about a half a lemon is always gonna do the job for you. So we're gonna squeeze a half a lemon. And sometimes citrus can be difficult. It's a common misconception that citrus is a summer harvest, but it is actually a winter harvest. So, you know, seasonally that can be difficult. If you take a fork, sometimes you don't have, you know, a juicer, you can just take a fork and kind of get the rest of that juice out of there. But about a half a lemon is going to do the trick. And then you're going to take your sweetener. Now, traditionally it was white sugar, but as, you know, our industry has evolved, we've gotten more creative and more nuanced. So you can use any sweetener you'd like depending on your fruit. You can use a simple syrup, which is just white sugar and boiling water. You can do a honey syrup, molasses, agave, anything that lends itself to your fruit. So in my case, I'm using a dark berry and a basil, so I'm going to use a honey syrup. but Andrea, yours is a little bit lighter with that stone fruit. So you're going to use a sugar because it just complements it better and it won't overwhelm it, where the blueberry kind of needs that. So you're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of that. And then finally, the most important part, and this is the danger of the smash, is that it is a boozy cocktail that is very easy to drink. So you're going to do 2 ounces of your bourbon. Now, one thing that the later iterations of the smash are very specific about is the type of ice that you use. So it is always said small ice, pellet ice, shaved ice, crushed ice. So they're very specific, and the same for the julep, that you need to use very small type ice. So what we have is we found silicone ice trays on Amazon that are adorable, and they make the tiniest little pellet cubes. It's fantastic. Let me grab mine out of the freezer here. But again, you know, if you haven't been on Amazon and you want to make a smash, you can absolutely just get ice from your freezer, wrap it in a towel and hit it with a mallet and create your own crushed ice. A lot of times your local convenience store will have it. So crushed ice is not hard to come by, but it is important for the cocktail. So because I am going to swizzle mine in the glass, I'm going to add my ice directly to the glass. Andrea is going to add her ice to the tin.
Now, do I need to kind of smash this all together? Is
It
that?
depends on the ripeness. If your peach is really ripe, the ice should do the job. If it's not, then I would smash it together a little bit, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, you can use so many implementations for that. You can use the back of a spoon. You can use the back of any kitchen utensil. You don't have to have a muddler. This is all very, you know, at-home, user-friendly.
All right, I'm gonna pour this into my shaker. Ooh.
So you're gonna shake to smash, and I'm gonna stir to smash.
I really feel professional. It's so easy so far, though, and that's what I love about it. It's like I'm not, you know, I mature whiskey for a living. That's what I love to do, and but making cocktails is not my thing. And this is really super easy, especially if I'm having friends over or cooking out. This is a wonderful drink, and I love the idea that you brought up something for winter, because I think that's amazing too.
And also, I mean, there's so many fun things about the smash too, because again, you can do it seasonally, you can do it to whatever you have, but you can also do fun stuff. If you're having a grill out and you want to throw those peaches on the grill and have like a smoky smash, like
I love that.
you can do with it. And that's why it's really interesting and fun for me. And the one thing I like about these simple cocktails is they can make your, you know, at-home bartender seem really impressive, when we all know we haven't done much here, but we're about to have a really delicious, refreshing cocktail. So one last option here is you do have the option to add a little bit of water or soda water. It's not necessary, but if you felt like having more of a sparkling, refreshing beverage, you could top it with a little soda, but definitely not necessary. And then again, for your professional twist as an at-home bartender, you're gonna garnish the drink. So I have this beautiful basil and blueberry, and I'm just going to make a little boat and stick them in there. And this is just another bartender trick. We don't just put garnishes on there to look pretty. When you have a garnish that is a component of the beverage and it's right on the nose when you drink it, it brings out those flavors in the cocktail. So if you haven't muddled your mint enough, or maybe you had a less than ripe peach, but that's sitting on the rim of the glass and it is right on your nose when the drink hits your mouth, you're going to get more of those flavors. So that's kind of a fun thing about garnishes too, is that they serve a purpose. They're not just pretty. But yes, look at how professional we look.
Look at that.
And we have just now created our very own individual summer smashes.
All right, cheers, Carrie. Cheers, all bourbon women and friends.
Oh man, that's delightful.
Oh yes, that is awesome. It is awesome. And this has been so fun. Kerri is the bar manager at the beautiful bar at Fort Nelson in downtown Louisville, which unfortunately is closed right now. But we serve world-class cocktails there normally. It's an amazing place. The bar menu was crafted both by Dave Wondridge, who's a wonderful, amazing cocktail historian, as well as the bar team at the bar at Fort Nelson. So hopefully you'll be able to come and join us in the future. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Well, you can't get to Michter's Fort Nelson Distillery right now because of COVID, but I have the next best thing, which is I have Andrea Wilson and I have Carrie Casler. Carrie, I'm going to butcher your last name. I'm so sorry. Both with us here for some live Q&A. You all, the bourbon smash recipe is a huge hit. I've been watching the comments come through on YouTube. Keep those coming, folks. It's exciting to see those, but people love a bourbon smash.
Yeah, it's a very easy summer drinkable cocktail with whiskey in it, and usually people don't attribute the brown spirits for a summer drink, so that's, it's a surprising thing, and people really enjoy it.
Oh, well, it was a hit, and we can't wait to make those. And so, folks that are watching at home, I fully expect to see your cocktails, your bourbon smashes. Tag Michters and tag Bourbon Women so we can take a look at your concoctions coming up. Carrie, you have come up through bartending ranks, and we talked a little bit while the video was rolling about your history with Michters. We had a question from Luciana Braz, and she asked about what would be the bourbon for beginners. So what from the Michters profile would you recommend?
We get this question a lot at the bar because we do have a lot of people that are traveling, and you have a bourbon lover and you have a bourbon novice. And that bourbon novice is always willing to try it, but they're not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. And to be perfectly honest, our entire line is very approachable. It's fantastic, but I usually will recommend the American whiskey from our US 1 line because I would say it is the most approachable. It is the same juice as the bourbon, aged in a Michter's barrel. So it kind of rounds out those edges and gives you a very sweet, very approachable whiskey to drink. So anytime anybody says, I don't drink whiskey, I don't drink bourbon, what should I have? I usually recommend that to them, and they're very pleased with the outcome.
Now, that's a great point about being well-rounded and sort of approachable for a lot of folks. Is there a particular way to serve it that you serve to a bourbon beginner? For example, do you serve it neat right off the bat? Or do you say, try it or something?
I would give them the neat version, and I would give them a side of ice, and I would say go ahead and give it a try because the customer is always right, so whatever they want. But I would say if you think you want it on ice, or if you think you want a side of Coke, you can have all of those things, but I'm going to separate it for you. So go ahead and try it on its own first and then do what you need to do with it. But I usually encourage them to try it neat first and then go ahead and add ice or a little drop of water, or if they so choose, something like Coke or ginger ale, which happens a lot. But I feel like I usually am able to convince people to try it neat first, and they are always very pleased with what they've tasted.
Oh, good.
From a beginner perspective.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
Andrea, we got several questions that are for the hardcore Michter fans among us, and I count myself as one of them. So I'm going to give them to you rapid fire. Are you ready?
Okay, rapid fire. Let's go.
All right. Number 1 from Jackie Williamson, who is making the barrels for Michters? Can you tell us?
Oh, we use several different cooperages to make our barrels, but all of them have to meet our toasting and quality accuracy.
Okay.
So it's not just one cooperage.
Okay. That's good to know. Number 2, rapid fire from Devin Patel. Will Michters ever come out with a non-chill filtered? Look at my face.
No, I don't think so, because chill filtering is a part of our DNA. We really believe in it, and we don't believe Michters would be Michters without it.
Okay. Last rapid fire question for you, Andrea, from Jeff Kotke. Why can I never find the 10-year bourbon? And I joked and said that's because you're not standing outside of Michter's Fort Nelson 24 hours a day. That's how you get it.
That's very
Yeah, I know the 10-year bourbon and 10-year rye are hard to get, and we have so many people. Thank you so much for all of our consumers that love the brand and seek out our expressions. We are trying to, increase our amounts, but we're still a highly allocated brand. So that's the struggle. Thank goodness we have all of our consumers, and but we, as we grow, we'll continue to make more, and hopefully you will get some.
We hope so. And, just to rub salt in the wound, we've got your 10-year bourbon right here. Andrea and Kerri, thank you so much. We love Michter's, and we love that you've been a longtime friend for Bourbon Women. We're going to be in touch with you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Have a good night. If you have a couple of minutes, I want to make sure that you are on your device. Click on bourbonwomen.org/sip summer series and make sure you hit the e-auction, because you've only got 2 hours and change to bid high and bid often. So a lot of good things there. Make sure that you hit there. And now I want to go back to our good friend Susan Reigler from Bourbon Women. She is uncovering bourbon's medicinal connection for us. We always knew that bourbon was a health helper. Here's the proof. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Susan Reigler. I think most of you in Bourbon Women know me. I was past president, also been on the board for a long time, and have been to all of our symposiums since their inception, which has been such an exciting idea. This year, of course, we're going to be virtual, but that doesn't mean we're not still going to be together in spirit, or spirits, as you might want to say. And I'm going to give you a few little tidbits of bourbon lore and history and reference today, sort of some of our in-between segments. What I want to talk about right now is a connection that I call the bourbon and medicine connection, or again, bourbon and national service. And of course, there have been many instances of that. Most people know, most of you will certainly be aware that the distilleries, as soon as the COVID crisis emerged, just swung into action to produce hand sanitizer, because of course they were distilling alcohol, and they were distilling high proof alcohol, and a lot of them converted to doing a good deal of that. And that is not the first instance that the distilleries have pitched in a national emergency. Now, of course, we're well aware that there was a connection between bourbon and medicine going back to the 19th century, when whiskey was sold as medicine. If you were a pharmaceutical salesman, you also sold whiskey. And then, of course, during Prohibition, there were 6 million prescriptions for medicinal whiskey sold during Prohibition, because there seemed to be a real rash of whiskey-treatable illnesses that went on during the 1920s in the United States. But fascinatingly, even after Prohibition, the bourbon distilleries had a very, very important national role in World War II. And after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, Louis Rosenstiel, who was the owner, the president of the Schindler distilleries, and he owned many, many distilleries throughout the United States, including 7 alone in Kentucky. Schindler distillers went to President Roosevelt. It was actually Louis Rosenstiel himself went to Roosevelt and said, I have a 9-point plan that I am going to use in my distilleries and pass on to other distillers in order to convert our operations from making regular potable whiskey into industrial strength ethanol for the war effort, because there were so many needs for it. The Japanese controlled the rubber industry, and we needed to make synthetic rubber for tires, for gaskets, for all sorts of components. Ethanol was a crucial component in the manufacture of synthetic rubber. And the government built rubber manufacturing plants in far west Louisville, near the Shively distilleries. That's how Louisville's Rubber Town, where still today Michelin Tire and DuPont Chemical and other factories are located. And so the alcohol was being made right there, and then it could be taken to the rubber plants. It was also used for making antifreeze, for making propellant, smokeless gunpowder, for propellant for all sorts of munitions, plastics. Just incredible. Also, precursor for making rayon, which was used for making parachutes. So ramping up the industrial alcohol capability was something that was done by the distilleries. And in fact, by the end of World War II, the American distilleries, the bourbon distilleries, had manufactured close to half of all the industrial alcohol produced in the United States. But there was yet another really fascinating connection, which sort of brings us back around to the bourbon as medicine connection. Not only did distillers know how to make alcohol, of course, in order to have alcohol from the grain, they had to be adept at culturing yeast for fermentation. Well, of course, yeast happens to be a single-celled fungus. And also during World War II, the second most important project, besides, of course, the Manhattan Project, was ramping up the production of penicillin in order to make it available in millions of doses. Antibiotics were brand new. Penicillin was the first one. This was a new technology. Mass producing it was tricky, but what distillers knew how to do, they knew how to culture fungi, the yeast. And so, in fact, back to Louis Rosenthal's companies, he had an entire division, the Schindler Laboratories, that were converted over to making doses of penicillin. And so this really marvelous advertisement from World War II is from the Schindler Laboratories saying, you know, we make penicillin, this is going to bring our soldiers home safely. And of course, it wasn't only used for wounded soldiers, but also used in the civilian population. So the beginning of the antibiotic revolution, and bourbon distilleries were right in the middle of that too. So again, when you think about modern medicine and you think about modern industry, bourbon is right at the heart of it.
Hi, I'm Carol Ormay. I'm a longtime member of Bourbon Women and I chair the events committee. One of the things I like to do on vacation is to go to local liquor stores and visit local distilleries to find out what some of the local craft distilleries are doing. And we go to South Carolina a lot. We're big fans of Hilton Head, and there are a number of South Carolina distilleries that are doing great things with bourbon. And that's what I want to talk to you today about 3 different distilleries that I've decided that I really enjoy and enjoy their product very much. Now, the first 2 products here are Virgil Cane. And Virgil Cane is based out of Charleston, South Carolina. This is one of their newer products called Electric Owl. And this is their ginger infused version, which was my first introduction to Virgil Cane. And I have to admit, I had the best Manhattan I've ever had in my life at the Pearl in Bluffton, South Carolina, that was made with Virgil Cane ginger infused version. So if we look at Electric Owl, it is a 9-year-old bourbon. It is a sour mash. It has a great nose on it. Got a lot of fruit flavors or fruit scents in it. Peach, some apple, maybe even a touch of green grass, which is not unusual. Hay is a great flavor in bourbon. This is an incredibly smooth product. Very, very little burn on the front of the mouth, just a touch back here. You see it's got a nice color. I said it's 9 years old. there's something about it that I'm trying to define and I can't get it right away. I said apple, some grass, but a nice product if you want to come across Electric Al when you're down in South Carolina. It is a limited edition, so you might have some challenges finding it, but great product. Now let's talk about Virgil Cane's ginger infused version. Now I know a lot of people who like bourbon and ginger ale. So if you're a bourbon and ginger ale lover, trust me, this is a great product for you. They harvest the ginger about 30 miles outside of Charleston, so it's all a local product. When you smell it, you get the bourbon, but you really smell a lot of ginger. But when you taste it, you get a lot of apricot and a little bit more of plum, and again, a sense of drinking a bourbon infused ginger ale. So this is really a great product. Both of those made by Virgil Cane outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Now this is 6 and 20. It comes from outside of Greenville, South Carolina. So it's in the western part of South Carolina. It is not a bourbon, it is a whiskey because it is aged in wine barrels. So it's got a bit of a sweeter flavor to it. When you smell it, you can smell some cherry notes that come out of the wine barrels. Now the reason I say it's not bourbon, as you know, bourbon has to be aged in new white oak barrels that have been charred. If you move it into a different kind of a barrel to age it, it is no longer bourbon. Now if you finish it in a wine barrel where you have it's lived out its life in its charred white oak barrel, and now you move it into a wine barrel, that's a little bit different. That's still bourbon. But this is whiskey. But that's okay. It's a nice product. Again, very, very smooth. Has a little bit of nuttiness to it. Some walnut, some pecan flavor in it. The nose on it is very, very rich, like a cherry that you're going to taste, which comes from being aged in wine barrels. So, a nice product from 6 and 20. The last bourbon I want to talk about is Revival. Now, Revival, 3 years ago, was named the #1 bourbon in the South by Garden and Gun magazine. And of course, the South is really connected to bourbon in a lot of different ways. It is kind of our native spirit as Southerners. Now, the folks that put this together actually did a special project with Clemson University to revitalize a brand of corn called Jimmy Red Corn. So when you nose this bourbon, you do get a lot of corn in it, but it's got a nice spicy feel to it and a strong sweet corn, but a lot of caramel and vanilla oak that you would get from bourbon. Very, very nutty on the tongue. Not a lot of burn to it. It's 100 proof, and it is made by High Wire Distilling in Charleston, South Carolina. Interestingly enough, this bourbon is a 4-grain bourbon, and the 4th grain they use is rice, which is fairly unusual. Most bourbons use corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley, but this one uses rice in the place of malted barley. Very, very nice product and a very, very nice bottle. So, if you do happen to be traveling in South Carolina and you want to find one of these bourbons, I certainly do recommend all of these. Different bourbons from different tastes. I remember what I taste might be different than what you taste. But these are all excellent products, and I certainly do recommend them. So, cheers with our 6 and 20 Carolina Rouge.
Thank you so much to Bourbon Woman board member Carol Ormay. Someone suggested that maybe we should put Carol on the road when COVID is done for the Bourbon Women Travel Show. I'd be all in favor of that. But before that can happen, we need your help. So if you have not yet been to bourbonwomen.org and visited the SIP Summer Series page, I want you to do that now. Go ahead and pull it up on your phone or on your device, or on your tablet, on your laptop, whatever you're working on. Go ahead and pull that up, because I want you to see not only the great content that you've gotten over the past 2 nights and now this 3rd night with SIP Summer Series. I also want you to hit that auction. The e-auction ends at 10, so you've got 2 hours left to bid on all of the incredible offerings that are there. So many great items that are available, including a 1993 old Rip Van Winkle 15-year. I was still in high school when that thing hit the shelves. So I'm not going to give away how old I am, but that bottle has some age on it. So that's going to be a delightful bottle for someone to take home. You can bid on a private dinner with our Bourbon Women founder, Peggy No Stevens. If you've never had a Peggy party, you are missing out. So make sure that you bid on that item as well. We've also got a bottle of Weller Special Reserve 90 proof and a bid for a Stave and Thief Executive Bourbon Steward class seat. Now, you know, we have an embarrassment of riches, really, living here in Louisville, Kentucky. We're in the epicenter of the bourbon country. It's not uncommon for us to run into master distillers at the liquor store. So we recognize that we have lots and lots of blessings. But I know from watching you all on YouTube and on Facebook and the other social media profiles that you are all over this great land, and you may not have the opportunity to do those things. So you're not going to get those opportunities very often. So bid now. Go ahead and bid now on that e-auction. If you want to get more involved with Bourbon Women, even if you're a bourbon man, that is okay. We want to have you on board, and the easiest way to do that is to buy a membership. It is $50. That's it. And you get access to all the Bourbon Women content, as well as access to every Bourbon Women event across the country. Before COVID shut us down, we were hosting in excess of 200 events a year across the U.S. And if this is an indication of the kind of content and quality that you get from Bourbon Women, don't you want to take advantage of that year round? I reckon you would. Go ahead and put in your membership now. And while you're at it, consider making an additional donation to support the Amber Circle. The Amber Circle is our program to help promote women in the hospitality and distilling industries. It's a way for us to offer a hand up and mentoring to women who are just making their way in those careers. It's part of our calling. It's part of our purpose. If you have enjoyed the content that you've seen over the past couple of nights, I'm calling on you to spend what you would normally spend on a nice bottle of bourbon and kick that in for Bourbon Women and tag it for Amber Circle so that we can support those young women in those careers. I've seen a lot of you asking about how can I get involved? Do you have a location in Oklahoma? Do you have one in Nevada? Do you have one in lots of different places? We have branches all over this great land, and y'all keep knocking on our door to ask for more branches, which is great. But let me tell you where you can take part now. Our national headquarters is here in Louisville. We also have branches in Atlanta. We're getting ready to get those folks off the ground. Chicago, Indianapolis, Michigan, Missouri, New York City, Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati, Tennessee, Texas, and Washington, D.C. And when I say we've got other folks banging down the door, I'm not kidding. We have women that are begging to get a branch started in their hometowns and their states across the country. And in order to do that, we need your support. So to reiterate, hit that auction, hit that membership button, and make sure that you make a donation to Amber Circle. If you haven't put a bid in on the auction by 9 o'clock, I'm going to personally call you out and make fun of you. Don't let that happen. You don't want that to happen. Now, I have such a treat coming up for you next. I was talking with this young woman while we were waiting for the next piece to wrap up. She is a treat, and you all are going to be thrilled with the product that she has to offer. I want to introduce you to LaShan Arceneaux. She is known as Queen Sugar, and she's got some guided quarantine cocktail demonstrations. Settle back. You're going to love it.
Hi, Bourbon Women. It's LaShan with 3 Lumps of Sugar. So happy to be here with you guys today. So today I'm going to talk about making quick, easy infused cocktails at home. And we're all at home from COVID, and maybe we don't feel quite ready to go back to bars, but we want to have those same great drinks at home that we have at the bar, but we don't have all the ingredients. So I want to talk to you today about our cocktail sachet. So what the cocktail sachet is a great little bag that's filled with all the ingredients for a specialty cocktail. So we've got one that's got mint and turbinado sugar. It's perfect for making a mint julep at home. All you need to do is add some bourbon to it and some crushed ice. Gotta have crushed ice. And we've got old fashioned, we've got some ginger hibiscus, we've got lots of different flavors. But today, the flavor that I'm going to be using is a chai spice old fashioned. So in here, I've got our very own garam masala mix. So garam masala is traditionally an Indian spice. So every household has their own. It's like everyone has their own salsa, or everyone's got their own Cajun spice or their own seasoning that they use. So this is what you would find in most homes in India. So this is a blend of cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, a bunch of spices that we make ourselves at 3 Lumps of Sugar. We've got our bitter cherry. So what you're going to get is the cherry flavor as well as the bitter flavor. We've got some all-natural turbinado sugar. Turbinado sugar is the thing you want to use. It is unbleached, unrefined sugar. So you want to use that, but it's going to melt because we're using our Elijah Craig here at room temperature. And I'm just using it in a whiskey glass. So this is a crystal mixing glass. I've got 8 ounces of bourbon in here. So one of these bags is good for 8 ounces. So what you can do is make a small batch and then drink some now, save some for later. You can bottle it and save it to have another time. And then the last thing we have in here is our chai black tea. So what that's going to do is that's going to add that bold tea flavor. So it's almost going to be like our iced tea, but with a little more punch to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and add 1 cocktail sachet to our 8 ounces of bourbon. And while that is sitting, I'm going to talk with you. That takes about 5 or 6 minutes to release its flavors into the bourbon itself. So I want to talk about infusions. Infusions can be anything quick and easy. What I do recommend if you're going to be doing an infusion is make sure that everything is dry. As you see here, everything I have is dry, because what's going to happen if you use something fresh, you've got to drink it right away or refrigerate it and drink it within 48 hours. Because what will happen is it will start to get funky. You could have mold growth, things like that. But with dry ingredients, you won't have any problems. So the cocktail sachet is perfect application for this. We do a lot of infusions. You can do it with just about any spirit, but I love a great old fashioned. I love to have a mint julep. I love all those types of things. And I just feel like this is the perfect way to have it at home. It's great to take for travel. You can take it on the plane with you without alcohol, get to your destination, buy your bourbon, or if you've got your mini bottles of bourbon that you take in your bag with you, then what you want to do is take those out when you get to your destination. You can make this in your hotel room. You don't have to drink at the hotel bar if you're trying to avoid crowds, things of that nature. And then they're good for mixing and matching. So I like to take the hibiscus grapefruit and mix it with anything that's got ginger, the ginger mint. So those 4 flavors are complementary and all go well together. So what you can do then is if you're going to do this, you can double your amount of bourbon, or you can use the same amount and just let it be a little stronger, because what we're going to be doing is adding some ice to the mix anyway to dilute it. So that's going to do is give you a little bit of dilution and stretch it a little bit. And then you can garnish or not garnish. Here's my take on garnish. It's pretty, but I want a garnish that's going to be edible for me. It's the sustainability, it's the recycler in me. I hate a garnish that I've got to toss at the end. So I almost never do a lemon wheel or lime wheel unless it's candy, because who doesn't want to eat a candied lemon or lime wheel at the end of their drink? And so for me, garnish is something that's a personal choice. I am going to garnish this today with the tiniest section of orange peel, and I did use the oranges to make orange juice after, so no waste there. And then some of our sugared cherries. So we actually freeze dry these cherries, And we use all of our ingredients at the peak of flavor. So what will happen is that everything's going to stay fresh for you. Everything's going to taste as it's meant to be had at peak of flavor. It's not going to be something that's off season. You know, you get that orange sometimes. It's a little bit bitter. It doesn't have the juiciness, doesn't have the freshness that you expect. And we solve that problem for you. And it's super easy. I'm just sitting here at the table with my cocktail sachet. I've got a little bit of ice in my coupe because at the end I'm going to put it in a coupe glass. And what I like to do is ice that beforehand. So that's a quick little trick. You're going to stir it with ice, but you can ice your coupe glass at the same time because we're not going to serve it on ice. So the glass is cold. You're not pouring your great chilled beverage into a hot or room temperature glass. Because I'm from Texas, everything is hot here. I think it's well over 95 or 96 degrees today. So this drink is also going to be cool and refreshing. I'm having it in a coupe glass, but it's great in a tall Collins glass where you put it on ice. You know, you could take crushed ice, almost like a mint julep, and then serve it on there. And so it's just a great, refreshing way to have a spin or variety on an old fashioned. And while we're talking about infused cocktails, all I'm going to do is give this a little spin, and then you'll be able to see in a couple minutes that the color is going to change. And what that is that's going to be the cherry and everything else infusing into the cocktail. And when you talk about infused cocktails, it's something that you can make ahead. It's something you can batch. So when the world opens back up, we're going to have a great Christmas party, and we're going to have some holiday packs for you that have cranberry. We've got some that got mowing spices, apples, all those tastes of holidays. So for Thanksgiving or Christmas, you've got a bunch of people over and you love to entertain, but you hate bartending because you don't get to enjoy your company because you're standing behind the bar. Perfect opportunity. You can throw a couple of these sachets into a big pitcher. You can make about a pitcher full. You can take that, you can dispense it into, if you've got a bottle with a stopper, you can dispense it into there. And then if you have a really, really fun pool party, what we like to do is dispense it into Capri Sun pouches, throw them in the freezer, and then let them get a little bit slushy. And then you just cut the corner and serve. You can serve with or without a straw. It's perfect by the pool, no glass, no open containers. Just make sure that the kids know that that's a mommy or daddy Capri Sun and not a kid pouch for them. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give this another stir. We wanna let this go for about 4 or 5 minutes is what I like. I think I get enough flavor in that 4 or 5 minutes for me. You can let it go as long as you want. You can let it stay in overnight. What I say is test it. So go ahead, put it together, let it sit, see if it's the sweetness you want, if it's the flavor profile that you want. If you think you want to let it go longer, let it go longer. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And there's nothing in it that's going to be so bitter that it's going to turn if you leave it too long, because there's some orange in there, but it's just enough to give us that hint of orange that we're looking for. And then if you want more orange, we actually sell packs that are just cherry and orange. So if you like, I like double cherry, double citrus. So that's a great way to get some double cherry, double citrus in your cocktail. So what I'm going to do now, take my coupe glass. All you want to do is when you've got ice in here like this, you just want to pour it out. So I've got a little container here. I'm going to pour my ice out. And I've got this little chill glass. I'm going to give this one last stir, just in its normal state. Then I'm going to pour in some ice to chill it a little bit. And so I'll pour some ice in there. Give it a stir. And all I'm attempting to do is give it some dilution. Drinks need a little bit of dilution. And then I'm giving a little aeration. I'm spreading those flavors all throughout the beverage itself. And I'm chilling it some. So I like to stir for about a minute. Just depends on how cold you want it. Because remember, I'm just putting in this coupe glass, so there's not going to be any ice after the fact. If I were putting it in a Collins glass or something that was going to be taller, then I, by all means, probably I wouldn't be so concerned about the chilling here. But that is very cold. And then all you want to do after that is you want to take your Hawthorne strainer and pop it on. It should fit right in. And I'll give you a trick. If you're at home and you've got a Hawthorne strainer, you can buy them at any store, but you don't have a mixing glass, you don't have shaker tins, you don't have any of that. It's a Southern trick. This fits perfectly into a wide mouth mason jar. So buy yourself a set of wide mouth mason jars. You can actually make the drink in the mason jars, put the lids on and then stick them inside the fridge or in a bucket of ice, some really fancy tray of ice to keep everything chilled. And as your guests come in, you can have out some glasses and then they can serve their own drink. So all you want to do is pop that in there, give it a last little swirl, and then you're going to go ahead and dispense that right in the glass. And that's it. You've now got yourself a chai spice old fashioned. Let me tell you how good it is. It's delicious. It's got a little sweet from the turbinado sugar. It's got the orange peel. It's got that cherry note on it from the dehydrated cherries. Because they're dehydrated, what happens is when they hit the liquor, they expand and they give off their flavor. I got the note of this chai tea, which is a great dark tea that you'll find in your typical like chai latte, and then the garam masala. So it's got a great flavor profiles, and it's simple and easy. See you guys for the next cocktail. And so of course I can just leave you with one cocktail. So we've got a second cocktail going here. So same basic setup. We've got our cocktail sachet. We've got our crystal mixing glass. We've got our coupe glass with ice. It's got a little ginger sugar on the rim. So that's going to kind of be our garnish. And then this one is going to be a hibiscus grapefruit ginger cocktail. So it seems like if those flavors wouldn't go together, but they do. This is what I've been drinking during COVID. I call it my COVID-tini, for lack of a better thing, because it sounds catchy, or my COVID cocktail. And so what it does is it's got grapefruit. So obviously citrus is always good for you. Vitamin C is good for you. The ginger sugar here, it's our turbinado sugar with some of our freeze-dried and then ground ginger. And of course what that does, ginger's got a little zip to it. It's great immunity boost. Anytime you make a drink and you want to add a little kick to it, you can do some fresh ginger muddled along with it, because that will give you that great flavor, as well as some great healing properties. And I've got hibiscus. So hibiscus all over the world, especially in Caribbean and Latin American countries, are always used in different things. You'll see a lot of countries will ferment it as a tea, almost like we have kombucha here in the US, and they call that sorrel, and they'll drink that every day, all throughout the day, almost like we drink orange juice, so something that's healing, boost your immunity, all those types of things. And of course, not medical advice by any means, but if you feel something can give you a little health kick and you want to have a cocktail, why not combine those two things? So in here, I've already got my 8 ounces of Elijah Craig, and I put in 1 cocktail sachet, and we're just going to let that sit a couple minutes. And then what that's going to do is that's going to infuse all those flavors into our bourbon, and then we're going to serve that in our glass with this ginger sugar rim. I love a ginger sugar rim. I like to, take a little bit in each drink, and that way I get a little extra ginger kick to it. I like everything spicy or just well seasoned, including my cocktail. It's the Louisiana girl in me, right? Gotta have seasoning on everything. And then it's not so sweet that it's making the drink itself too sweet for you to have. It's beautiful. You can see it's starting to get a little red down at the bottom. And you'll be able to see the full color effect that you're going to get when we pour it into the glass. So what it actually does is this hibiscus infuses really well, and it turns a beautiful red color. So it's a great addition also to those events where you want to have a nicely colored cocktail, but you don't have artificial flavors or colors, right? Hibiscus is a beautiful way to add some nice color, and a great floral note. So on the nose, it's going to be very floral, not as floral as rose, but definitely a floral fragrance is what you're going to get. And I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to show you when it drips how pretty this red color is on there. If you can see that, it drips this beautiful, beautiful red color liquid, and that is what is going into our bourbon. So to that, I'm going to add a little bit of ice, because dilution and chill, right? And I'm not using any fancy ice. I'm just using ice that we have at home, because everyone's going to be doing this from home, right? So you want to do something that everyone has. If you want to do fancy, large format ice, that's great. If you want to do crushed ice like a julep, that's great. If you want to do crushed ice, let me show you something that I do while I'm giving this a little stir. And I'm going to let it sit for a minute. I have one of these Lewis bags. So the Lewis bag was the old-fashioned way. There was no button on the fridge that you could push and get crushed ice from, right? So what you would do is you would have this Lewis bag, And then you would have a big mallet that you would put ice in here and you whack it, whack it, whack it, whack it, whack it. And then it's got some waterproofing to it the way it's finished. So this has been sitting on the table here with me, and this is what I've been using to get some ice going back and forth, and it has not melted. So that's a great way to get crushed ice for your juleps or any of your other drinks if you want to have something like that. And now that this has been sitting, I'm going to dump my cooling ice out. My glass is now chilled. I'm again going to be using my popcorn strainer. I'm going to pop that on. And when you pop it on, if you've got a little mixing glass, it's got a little spout on there, so you want to pop it on so that the spout is not covered. And then I'm going to pour this right in the glass. And I don't know if you guys can see, but it's got more of a red color to it than the original. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this bottle of Elijah Craig over, and I'm going to hold it right next to this drink. And so what you're going to see this kind of orange color that the bourbon has, right? The kind of lighter. And then you'll see this that's got this reddish color. And I'm going to do a little garnish on here, same garnish as before, a couple of cherries and a little tiny piece of orange. And I'm just going to lay it right here on the top. And then cherries are coated with the ginger sugar. So you get a little extra something there. So now you've got a second drink. So be sure to check out our website. We're going to have a giveaway for Bourbon Women. So I'm going to announce that in the live portion. I want you guys to be ready. I've got a great sampler and I've got a great Elijah Craig kit to give away. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening. Check us out on YouTube and Instagram, 3 Lumps of Sugar, all spelled out. And I look forward to making more cocktails with you. Thank you.
LaShan Arceneaux is Queen Sugar, and you can see all of her products at www.3lumpsofsugar.com. And y'all, she is here, and I have been watching the YouTube comments, and you all are blowing up. LaShan, the tip about the mason jars, I could hear people hitting the floor like, oh my God, why didn't I know that already?
Right? Everyone in the South has a mason jar in their cupboard.
Right. Right. Or we can go get them at the Walmarts. They're close by. That is awesome.
Exactly.
LaShan, thank you so much for joining Bourbon Women. And I don't know if you know this or not, but our founder, Peggy Knows Stevens, lightly stalked you on Instagram for months. Like, she was like, I have to figure out what this woman is doing. This is incredible. I'm so glad that you were able to connect with us with Bourbon Women.
Absolutely. I stalk her back, if that makes a difference.
Well, we had a lot of questions for you, LaShan. I want to start with a couple from Kim O'Hanson. She had some related questions. I'm just going to throw them all in at once. What inspired you to create these, and what's your background? Is it culinary? Is it mixology? Do you just have a passion for flavor? What's your background? How did you come to this?
So I actually was a former chef. And so working as a chef, you know, you always get what we call kitchen scraps, and the sustainability and the recycling person in me won't let me throw things out. And so I'd make fancy little cocktails with whatever we had left for the day. So if we had leftover carrot peels, became carrot juice, which became like a Bloody Mary, right? Which is a Bloody Mary with carrot juice instead of tomato juice. And so I became known for just making these cocktails with whatever we had left. And so I decided, you know, after I had a hip injury and needed to get off my feet, cocktail people might be my people. And so I decided to start this company. And so started doing artisan sugars, salts, botanicals, mixers, things like that. But really had always thought about, you know, these cocktail sachets, as we call them. And I've made them for myself for travel, because when you get on the plane, you want to bring things with you, but you don't want to check that bag. You want to just have your carry-on. And so having, you know, you can't have a bottle of bitters and all these different things unless they're a small enough size. I've had that happen where they confiscated my bitters and I was unhappy. So I started making these little tea bags for myself that I would just put in my bag, because it's just a tea bag. No one stops you for a tea bag. And when I got to my destination, I could just buy a bottle of whatever spirit there was and make these quick little infusions for myself. And so I thought, you know what, this is probably a thing I'm gonna look at. Then once COVID hit, my friends kept calling me saying, I don't want to go to the liquor store. I don't want to go to the store, but I want to make a drink, and here's what I have. What can I do? And I'd say, let me send you some cocktail sachets, because like the old fashioned, you just drop it in whiskey or bourbon. And then old fashioned, you know, you can make a rum old fashioned with her, and then just let it sit, and then you have everything you need. So there was no measuring, no jigger needed, nothing needed. And so people really liked it. And so I thought, you know what, probably onto something here.
Yes. I can basically see bourbon women fans across the country shaking their head. They're like, how do I get this? This is exciting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm very excited.
are you a bourbon drinker from way back, or are you an equal opportunity spirits consumer, or what?
I will drink all the things, but bourbon is at the top of my list. Bourbon and rum are my top two spirits. Usually on any given week, I'll have a couple of each. Cocktails, neat pours. I've done a couple of barrel picks with some bourbon and whiskey companies. And so I love my bourbons and my whiskeys.
We could sense in you a kindred spirit, LaShan. We knew this. We thought that you would be a bourbon fan.
Right.
A couple more questions from our YouTube friends. From Millie O'Donnell, she'd ask it early on in your video, do you flavor the sugars ahead of time, or do you mix in the sugar and all the other ingredients all at once?
So we flavor the sugar ahead of time. So because we started off as a sugar and salt company with tons of great flavored sugars, and so adding those with the other ingredients into the sachet, so it gives them more depth of flavor, and we don't ever want it to be just regular. I'm extra all the time.
Yeah. So if someone wants to try to do that at home, is flavoring your own sugar, is that a hard thing to do?
It is, and I don't say that just because I don't want people to try it, but the reality is, in order to mix things in with sugar, they have to have a certain texture, or you'll just end up with this gumminess, right? So if you took like cranberries, like craisins, and mixed it, you just end up with this gummy paste. So we go between a dehydrator and a freeze drying system. So when we powder it, it actually comes into like a fine powder that then makes the base of everything versus just a sticky gummy mess.
Oh. Fantastic. Well, LaShan, if we had 10 more minutes, we would hang out as long as we could, because bourbon women are excited about your product. And so, folks, if you want to learn more about Queen Sugar's products, go visit 3lumpsofsugar.com. And LaShan, I have a feeling that you're going to be a longtime friend for bourbon women, and Lord willing and the creek don't rise, let's get you back here to Louisville so we can see you in person and see some of these cocktails and taste them in person.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, y'all.
We are so glad to have you. Thank you so much, LaShan Arceneaux, Queen Sugar. It's so much fun to see the ways that people are enjoying their bourbon across the country, and bourbon women can help connect you to that. So next, I want to introduce you to our next content. It's Bourbon Night with Sarah Algram and Peggy Nose Stevens. They are going to be exploring barrel proof. It's my favorite. Enjoy.
Okay, you all have no idea how excited I am to have our next guest, Sarah Algram, from It's Bourbon Night. And let me tell you, I've watched this woman for many years just really develop this incredible podcast that she and her now husband, Chad, have done for, gosh, how long now?
5 years.
5 years. They have 60,000 plus followers. I'm one of them, I have to admit. I always follow what you do. But it's been such a delight to watch your career grow and all of the things that you've done, because I feel like they've been pioneers. You all have truly, I mean, when I think of all the podcasts that are on right now, I think of you all as one of the first. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I'd say we were on the frontier.
Yeah.
Early adopters.
I'm dying to know, though, because I'm in the interview seat now. I get to interview you, and it's so much fun because you're usually the one interviewing others, right? And so I have never really heard the story about how you and Chad even got started thinking about doing a whiskey podcast, because you didn't work at a distillery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the short version of it, because I tend to romanticize and drag it out.
Well, you got married over it,
we
so,
got married, so.
That's good. That's good.
No, I was working in marketing for a restaurant group at the time. Chad was working for a video production company. Our restaurant group was opening a bourbon-centric bar, and we needed a video. And so we hired his production company to come and do the work for it. And we became friends first. We started doing bourbon tastings, and then we're like, my marketing brain and his video brain were like, wait, why aren't we capturing this and sharing it with the world? So we kind of started that way. That was, early 2016 when we put out our first episode. And yeah, it kind of started as a hobby and it really just took off from there.
So tell the truth, who came up with the name?
We had a short list of names. I think that was, I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, you're being nice now.
Well, a little, but to be honest, though, we used to just say, do you want to have a bourbon night? Like, do you want to come over and do a bourbon night, and we'll just get a couple things out and taste them? And I think that's why it really stuck, because that's just what we were calling our little, flight fights or whatever.
Right. And how many total episodes? Do you even know how many you've done in that long of a period?
Oh, gosh. Live and produced episodes, I'd say we're getting close to 300.
300. That is staggering to me. I mean, just the content alone to put on something like that is amazing. And so, do you even remember maybe around what episode you first asked me to be on your podcast?
Oh, I would say that would have been in the 50s, somewhere under 100.
Oh, was it?
I
was under 100?
Oh, yeah, you were
early.
Early on.
Okay, so that was when we got together. I think we did a food pairing and tasted some great whiskey. And it was in the good old days when we could do events, right?
Right.
And be at restaurants and have all the noise around us and all the people. Yeah. But I remember distinctly, doing great food. I think it was Weta Michael's restaurant.
It was,
yeah. Weta Michael's restaurant, and we tasted great whiskey, and you all just picked beautiful spirits. And then I had the easy job of the food, right?
Oh, which was delicious. I still think about those biscuits.
We all think about biscuits. Let me tell you something. And that really, getting to know you then, I thought, wow, she is a woman who is so impressive and knows so deeply about spirits. And it's truly a passion, for you. And so I've always been really curious about how you and Chad even decide, what whiskeys you're going to go for. I mean, are people sending you some all the time to choose? Are you all pretty selective on how you describe whiskey and how you choose it?
That's a really great question. I would say it's a lot of balance. So we do get a lot of samples and bottles sent to us. We get a lot of questions through our channel about things that have recently come out. People are curious, I keep seeing this bottle, and I want to know more about it. Right. Or we're really dialed into social media, what's new and coming out. But I have to say a lot of it is because of that passion is sometimes just whatever we feel like doing. And I think that's actually the best way and like the best time to capture it is we'll be really passionate about, a new bottle of rye. And so we want to do a video on that or just a series on those ryes.
Right.
Or any kind of new release like that we're really dialed in on, that's definitely the time that we'll pull the trigger and go ahead and do an episode.
And over that 300 episodes, have you seen a real trend in whiskeys? I mean, are there things that really are evident to you that things are changing or people are being more innovative? Or what are you seeing as trends right now?
I think early on, we were definitely seeing, and it still are, a lot of finished products. Right. But I'd say in the past 2 years, it feels like a lot of brands are trying to get their finger on the pulse of how do I get the next Pappy? How do I create that next gotta have it, we'll stand in line for it bottle? And I think, we see Jim Beam doing that. Let's see, Heaven Hill's, doing their larceny barrel proof three times a year. I think different distilleries are kind of trying to figure out what's our angle
like exclusive expressions or
because I think they know that they're catering that to this collector enthusiast audience who wants something a little bit more special, and so they're really just trying to figure out what gets them. So I think that's probably the latest thing that we've been keeping an eye on.
Well, and then of all the feedback that you get from your viewers, what do you really think they want? I mean, is there a disconnect at all, or what do you think that, or how do you think people should be marketing to viewers today?
That's a good question. I think people come to our channel sometimes because they can't decide whether or not they want to buy something. And often when we're talking about things like limited releases or even just these barrel proofs that we have on the table here, we're talking about a substantial investment in a bottle for some people. And so I think they're maybe on the fence about deciding whether or not they're going to get it, and they're looking for that extra push in one direction or another. And that's kind of what we hope to provide on the show is just, Chad and I, over the past 5 years, have solidified our palates individually and what we like. And I think people, as they've watched the show over time, have come to figure out if they identify more with one or the other of us. And so they kind of have developed a sense of trust with us, that they can, you know, rely on if our recommendation or not. But I don't know how you capture that as a brand in marketing, that type of thing. I mean, I guess it's sort of like the influencer content trend.
For sure.
But yeah.
Well, and you mentioned you're in Chad's palate, and I know you both have great palates, but do you see a difference in your palates, especially as a woman? Do you think that you kind of have the advantage? Because biologically, you know, it is true that we have better olfactory senses. So how many times do you outdo him?
Oh, we have this discussion all the time.
I'm sure you do.
It is a constant battle. Who has the best palate? Of course, I'm going to say I have the best palate.
Right.
Chad has a great palate. I think we pick up on different things. He normally gravitates towards darker, richer, especially like nutty flavors. He really picks up on quickly. I personally think that I taste more dimension. You know, more fruits, florals, baking spices that I can pick up. But yeah, biologically, I think that's so interesting. And
it is interesting.
We've been talking about that a lot, that it's just, you know, there's no real 100% scientific reason, but they say, I was reading a study the other day that women have 50% more neurons in their olfactory system in their brain, and that could potentially be a reason why. And why do we have those, right? We want to be able to taste for, you know, children, people that we're taking care of. It's instinctual. Yeah.
That's right.
But it comes in handy.
That's why you had great instincts bringing barrel strength to me.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I would have loved to have tasted with you. So I love it. But back to your palate, how did you develop it? Because, of course, when you first started, you were getting to know it. It was almost kind of a journey for you, right?
Yeah.
And learning. And so now, after all these episodes and all of the different things that you've done, you know, how would you tell someone, especially the people watching this show right now, how would you tell them how to develop their palate better?
The first advice that I give to anybody whenever they're trying to develop their palate is to relax.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see, you know, other reviewers giving them 10 descriptive words.
All the sexy vocabulary.
Right. And they read the back of a bottle and they think, oh, I should be tasting these things. And I think they put a lot of pressure on themselves.
Right.
And that's not really necessary. You know, we're all going to taste things different. It's going to be subjective for some people. So I would just say, relax. Give yourself a break. You don't have to pick out 10 things the first time. And mindfulness in your everyday life, just not when you're drinking whiskey.
That's a great one.
Think about when you're cooking, you know, what are you smelling? What are you tasting? If you're just out in, you know, taking a walk and you get a whiff of some flowers, what is that?
Right.
Some of the advice that you gave on that first tasting that we did together is something that I keep really close, which is sort of that go one step further, you know, drill down. Okay, I'm getting a baking spice. Well, is it clove? Is it cinnamon? Is it allspice? How do you get to that next level? And then I think also just practice in patience. Give yourself time. It's not going to be something that happens overnight.
That's right.
And the more that you do it, the better that you're going to get.
Isn't that lucky that that's the case?
Right.
That the more you do, the better you get. So why don't we, because I heard you say, just relax when you drink your whiskeys.
Yeah.
So why don't we kind of take a stab here and take a little taste? And what you tell me about the product, why you chose it, and we'll dig in.
Yep. So as you mentioned, I picked 3 barrel proofs. I want to start with the Maker's Mark. It is the lowest proof. I believe, and I can't see the front of the bottle right now, I think it hangs out around 112.
112, even better.
So he knows this.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a weeded product, so it's going to let the corn come through more. And although it's at barrel proof, I think it's just going to be a little softer, sweeter, milder. So I think this is for someone that wants to get into barrel proofs, but maybe isn't ready to go, you know, all the way to that Elijah Craig, which is in the 130s.
And you know what I always try to teach too is that while you're having a barrel proof, especially, is, you know, don't dig that nose deep, deep, deep. You know, just kind of bring it into the side, because you can really get, you know, more of the aroma and not so much the alcohol, you know, which is nice.
Yeah.
Ready to taste?
I am.
This is a kickoff. It's kind of a kickoff.
That'll warm you up.
I know, it's delicious. They outdid themselves, I
They
think,
did.
on this cask.
And I really think, like, I love the.
I still get that orange, though, that they, I always get orange citrus for some reason with makers, and it's even deeper and
Yeah.
broader with this.
Yeah,
and honey.
I really love the direction that they've been going the past few years with putting out more higher proof stuff.
Mhm.
They have their private select, they have the cask strength, they did the 101. I think it's really speaking to the direction that bourbon is going right now.
Absolutely. I always get too some not pecans, but just some light nuttiness to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, just like a really light toasted.
Yeah, like toasted sliced almonds.
Yes,
or,
exactly.
Yeah,
Like
maybe
a
that's
really-
the best way to describe it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think almonds is perfect.
Well, this one's beautiful. And then, what do you think of the finish?
It's got a decent. It's hanging out.
Absolutely. I'm total upper mouth, back of tongue, very even, but a real sexy texture.
Yes, a great texture.
Great mouthfeel.
Just a little Kentucky hug
Yeah,
at the
little
end.
Kentucky
we love
hug.
that.
I love it.
Yeah. So the thing I love about barrel proofs is, we do say like more women are gravitating towards them, bigger, bolder, uncut
No doubt
flavors.
about it.
The textures I find are
Mhm.
often way more interesting to me. But the thing I love about them is that they give you choice, and that if you like it with an ice cube or a little bit of water, you can buy this bottle and make it stretch a little bit.
Absolutely. That's a very good point.
I just love the option to be able to make it the proof I want it. Maybe
Right.
I don't want it at 112. Maybe I want it closer to like 107, but it's not being made 90 for me.
Exactly.
I get that option.
Right, right. Now, that's a very good point, because you can, make it a lower proof if you choose. But I like to have that choice.
Me too.
Right?
Who doesn't like to choose?
Who doesn't like to choose? And it might taste better because I'm drinking out of an It's Bourbon Nights.
Oh, look at that. I drink more
Glencairn.
bourbon.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, you ready for the next one?
I am.
What'd you
So,
choose?
Let's see. Next, we will go to the
Elijah?
Elijah Craig. Now, this
Wonderful.
one is higher proof than the Booker's, but I also...
I'm so disappointed.
I feel like in this lineup, it's almost like in, the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's the just right.
That's a good way of putting it.
I think the Maker's gives you that soft sweetness. The Booker's packs a huge punch of dark, rich.
Right.
This one is especially nutty
Right.
for me, and I think this one is definitely the most dimensional. It's really balanced, more of those traditional bourbon flavors. So I put it in the middle as that just right.
Right, and when you say dimensional, I remember writing a review on this particular whiskey in Bourbon Plus magazine, and I overwrote the descriptors because this is so complex.
It is.
I mean, I was everything from maple syrup on pancakes to mascarpone to, it went on and on and on and on.
Yeah. This is a great one. This is the A120.
I do get more of the smoky, but definitely the nutty.
Oh, yeah.
Just comes through.
More of the char
pecan
coming
and char.
through.
Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, that smokiness coming on the finish. I really love the texture on this one. I think
Yeah.
it is so silky.
Well, the smokiness, it's almost like an apple smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Like candy apple, and then you roast a marshmallow, and just toast it fine.
I love
Which
how
is
you
what I
paint the
love.
pictures. It takes me there.
But I love it. And again, I could go on and on about how complex, but at the same time, for the proof that it is, very gentle, very unobtrusive.
Right.
I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Delicious.
Yeah, I've found over the years in doing the tastings that I sometimes can't 100% trust my very first sip. I just
would
try to
agree
take
with
like
that.
a.
Did you notice how I've been taking a second taste?
mhm.
You're absolutely right.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
That first sip just to get acquainted, and then on that second sip is when I really try to figure out what's going on
Right.
here. Sometimes Chad points out I get excited and I take that second sip pretty quickly, and that's how I know when it's really good.
Yeah.
Is because I just can't wait.
That's right. That's right. It's so funny because I think in our industry, and as experts, we do come up with vocabulary. We do, but sometimes we just want one that just plain tastes good, and not worried about the breakdown of it all.
Right.
I just want to enjoy it.
Yeah, there are days when we're doing reviews and I'm like, I don't know what else to say about this. It tastes good. You should buy it.
And that's why I honestly, Elijah, I think this is one of the best offerings they've done.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got that limited factor, but yet it's still, you know, you can still find it. It's a great price for the proof. This
I
is
agree.
definitely an always buy for me.
And approachable. You know, it's not too intimidating. It's very approachable in my
Absolutely.
opinion. Beautiful. Well, on to bigger and bolder.
That sounds good.
It must be Booker's.
It must be Booker's.
It must be Booker's. There's no else how to, explain it.
Booker's is one of my favorites, and I feel like it's become more divisive in the past couple of years because they have been raising the price. I'm a true, Booker's lover, and I believe that it was maybe underpriced before for what you get, and
okay.
so I think, if they raise it to the price that maybe it should be, then
that's right.
We all just have to accept that.
That's right.
That things change. But for me, if people don't want to buy it, I'm like, that's fine. I'll take yours.
That's right. Yeah, more for us.
More for me.
More for us. Now, why are you drawn to it though? Why is it that?
There's just something, and it may be the story behind Booker's and how it started. I know it definitely has a lot to do with the flavor, but it's something just like warm and almost kind of nostalgic. And I love how different,
Well, certainly.
There's 4 a year now, and each one can be so unique and also still Booker's.
Right.
And I love that they've created, almost a family of these bottles.
Right.
You can tell they're all related, but they each have their own personalities.
And I failed
love
to
that.
look. Is this a particular one that
This
you brought
is
today?
the Granny's batch, so
The Granny's
2001.
batch. Okay.
Obviously,
Explain the different ones that they've done. I know there's been a Kathleen.
Sure, they did Kathleen's batch, Teresa's batch. I think the Oven Buster's batch was someone in his family had used it in a
his wife.
recipe. His wife, that's who it was. Had used it in a recipe, and it busted the oven
That's
door
right,
right off.
that's
So,
right.
I love
That's
how
why
they,
lesson to all: don't cook with high proof whiskey.
Yeah, don't do that. So this is the Granny's batch. This is one of my favorites. It's definitely, I've only had the 2020 01 and the 02, but this is my favorite of this year so far.
Well, I have not tried this yet then.
I think that it's very peanut buttery.
Oh, wow, really? Okay, well, I
Personally.
haven't nosed it yet, so I'm going to nose it with you. And oh my gosh, Sarah.
Today it's giving
It's like
me
roasted nuts.
Yeah,
for
today it's
sure.
giving me more like, when you walk into like a Texas Roadhouse or a Logan's
Right,
Roadhouse
right.
where they, crack the peanuts at
Absolutely.
the table and that atmosphere.
Oh, good for
it
you.
gives me-
I would not have thought of that until you planted that, because usually what I get with a Booker's is smoked cherry. I usually get a deep, like Bing cherry, dark cherry. That is what I normally get because cherry comes from a lot of barrel notes that people don't really realize. Even though it's a fruit note, it comes from a lot of the barrel. So I definitely get the roasted nuts and kind of that peanut butter note.
So this one is almost, I feel like the Maker's is at one end of the spectrum and the Booker's is at the other end.
For sure.
This is a lot darker, deeper, richer, whereas you're getting a lot of sweetness.
Caramel for days.
Getting more sweetness with the Maker's, definitely getting, it's not as dimensional as the Elijah Craig. It is leaning very much more heavily into that nutty flavor.
Absolutely. I'm going to taste this. Oh wow.
So
then it comes out again.
Right.
That whole nuttiness comes out again. That's terrific.
And I think there's something comforting about that flavor, like almost like when you eat a peanut butter sandwich as a kid after you get out of the pool or something like that. It gives me those nostalgic, feelings. But yeah, there's just something about Booker's that I will always love.
Well, I have to say, speaking of nostalgic, I feel nostalgic sipping whiskey with you. I know we were on, how many episodes? You said I was under 100?
Yes.
When we did the food pairing. But then you and I came back and did one together on my bourbon podcast, right, with Perry.
Yep.
And it was 3 women. They were introducing women. And that's when you told me you got engaged. And that was so exciting because it wasn't that long ago.
No.
But I ended up telling Sarah a story when I got married that I was sneaking bourbon underneath my veil before I went down the aisle. Whether it was nerves or whatever, Mama needed a little juice. And I told her I would find that photo because she asked me, she goes, oh my gosh, do you still have that photo? I'd love to see it because she was planning her wedding. And ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Here it is. And she said, I'm going to recreate that photo when we get married. And Sarah?
I did.
Reveal. This is when I knew I loved this woman. This is when I knew I loved her and we were going to be buds forever, because you couldn't get any more fun than that. And so I want to toast you. It was so special having you on this show and being part of Symposium. We're so grateful for the support. And let me tell you, if you have not tuned in to It's Bourbon Night, you need to, because she and Chad are terrific, approachable, friendly, and will teach you more about whiskey than you ever wanted to know. So Sarah, thanks for sharing a little bit of Booker's and all of these products today. You continue to be an inspiration to me.
Thanks so much, Peggy.
Love it. Cheers.
Cheers.
How much fun is Sarah from It's Bourbon Tonight? And I mean, a lot of you all probably know Sarah already because we just learned she's nearly at 60,000 subscribers for that YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed, I don't know why you haven't. Why be behind the times? Go be Sarah's friend. Go subscribe on the YouTube channel. Fred has basically been sitting over here in the corner talking about how great Sarah and Chad are. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
You know, I mean, so I've been covering whiskey for 15 years, and I think when we typically look at whiskey media, for years it's been writing and books, and Chad and Sarah are part of this like new wave of digital media that has changed the game in a lot of ways. And I would put Chad and Sarah up there with anybody. And I've started to do YouTube. Obviously, we're on my channel right now, and I've been doing it for about a year, and I've grown to really admire what they have built, and they've built it in a classy way. And I think It's Bourbon Night, they've built a brand and it's genuine. And so to me, it's Sarah is someone who resonates with a lot of people, and Chad does as well. And they're like this perfect combo on set. And they're married now.
That's so sweet. Yeah. That's Fred. That's very nice. Sarah, do you feel like a piece of toast because Fred's buttering you up?
That just warms my heart.
Right? But
I know Chad's somewhere listening also, having his heart warmed.
Well, I think that authenticity comes through, Fred. And if it didn't, you all wouldn't be as popular as you are with followers all over the world. So talk about how that grew for you all. I mean, you started off and you were thinking, I'm just making this for people that are watching in Central Kentucky. And then you learned that, oh, no, we're not. It's much bigger than that.
Sarah, you just went mute on us. Check your mic there.
Uh-oh.
Unmute yourself there.
Well, while she's fixing that, let me give you an update.
She's back.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I'm checking out. You all talk.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah. Good. Sarah, did you hear the question, which is, how did you grow into this?
Yeah. I think, we kind of a thread that's continued since we started the channel almost 5 years ago has been that we never really position ourselves as experts. We're not experts. We're just enthusiasts. And so I think, in the beginning, we were making the videos mostly for ourselves as a fun pastime. And it's really just been about our journey, and our audience has really grown with us. So I don't know that we're any different than when we started, other than one, we're married, and two, I guess I'm quicker with my tasting notes. But other than that, my love of barrel proofs has grown. But I think that's it.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you talked about barrel proof, Sarah, because I think barrel proof can scare off a lot of people. It sounds like something that only, big burly pirates should drink, and that's not the case at all. Susan Reigler says the same thing that you said in your video, that women's olfactory bulbs are bigger. We go for this, and our own research with Bourbon Women says we tend to prefer higher proof bourbons. Are you seeing that borne out when you talk with other women about bourbon products?
Yeah, definitely. When I talk with people in our local bourbon society, or just friends of mine, I think that the love of barrel proofs, like you said, it can be a little intimidating, but I think once you break down that wall, there's just the texture that comes with them, the flavors, and I think the ability to choose your proof, really, because you can drink it neat at the barrel proof, or you have the option to add as much ice or water that you want. So it's really giving you a lot of options and a lot more from a sensory perspective. And I think a lot of people that I know and a lot of women that are on our channel completely agree with that.
Yeah, I'm all in with you on that. And we pulled out the Elijah Craig barrel proof that you were sampling earlier with Peggy No, and it is fantastic. I like this very, very much. So let me ask you a couple of questions, Sarah, that have come in from our YouTube channel. Knows Your Bourbon wants to know about your show, about how many hours of planning and production and editing goes into 1 hour of your video content.
It varies. Sure. It really depends on what we're covering in the episode. We do our uncorking reviews, which is just opening up a bottle and giving our first impression of it. That one's one of our simpler videos, and that one probably, with all hours included, probably about 8 hours. Every year, though, we do something, really extreme. For example, our holiday gift guide that comes out around Black Friday. And that episode with all the planning and the editing probably is a full work week. A lot of that is on Chad. He is an excellent editor, but it does take time to compile all that. So it really just varies, but it's quite a big undertaking.
That's a lot of content that you all are having to put together. So it's a heavy lift for you guys, but we're glad you're doing it.
We are too. It's definitely worth it.
Well, good. Got a question from Maria Martinez about recommended drinking glasses. And I've got Glencairns here, but that's certainly not the only way that people are trying and drinking their bourbon. Do you have a preference? Do you have a favorite?
I tend to go for the Glencairns. Occasionally, I'll just drink out of a rocks glass if that's what's around. It doesn't really bother me. If I'm just sipping to enjoy something, on the couch watching a movie, I'll probably go for a rocks glass. I do really prefer the Glencairns, though, when we're nosing for the show. Other options, we used to drink out of the Norland glasses a lot. Just to see kind of how the flavor of something that we were really familiar with would change in and outside of that glass. And then lately we ordered some copitas for ourselves, and we've been sipping out of those, which I like because they come with a little lid hat, so you can trap the nose a little bit, and that one's nice too.
Okay. I've got another question that's coming through, and I've lost it. But it was something about, I feel like, Sarah, you are amazing for women. How can we as women continue to grow our palates? That's a great question.
That is a really good question. I think I talked a bit about this in the segment, but I think, if you're out and about or cooking, really anywhere in your garden, I think if you're just mindful of your experiences, and we were talking about this right before we went into the Q&A, but just figuring out memories that are tied to smell and things like that will really help you be able to access when you're nosing something. If you're more mindful in your everyday life, that you'll be able to connect to that and pick up on it. I think for me, that's what helps me describe the best quickly. So that's the other thing about shooting. Like, we do live episodes every Sunday, and we have to be pretty quick about our assessment of things. So that is what's been helping me. We also did buy a nosing kit that we've been trying to use a little bit to just kind of hone that in a little bit better.
Yeah.
And Peggy has also been a source of inspiration, teaching me to say, okay, well, this smells nutty to me. Well, Peggy's next question would be, well, what kind of nuts? Is it roasted peanuts? Is it pecans? Go a step further. Ask yourself those questions.
That is such a great tip, because I find that no matter what spirit you're nosing, you might get that first hit of, this is fruit. Okay, is this black fruit? Is this cooked fruit? Is it dried fruit? All of those are different, right? And so pushing yourself to think about that next level is really important. Sarah, what was some of your journey in becoming a bourbon enthusiast? How did you start, and how did were there any aha moments for you where you thought, okay, I can tell the difference now between the different types of roasted nuts, or I really understand how this bourbon performs in a cocktail? Was there some aha moment for you?
Oh, I really wish I could give you one of those. I really wish I could point to this one day where it all came together. You know, the more we got to doing the show, I think sometime in 2017, we got to the point where we were doing one show a week, and then shortly after, 2 shows a week. I think it's really just practice for me. I do remember one of the earlier, we do what's called flight fights. So we do blind. 4 blind bourbons, and then we'll rank them and reveal at the end. And I remember nosing one and being like, oh, I know exactly what this is based on the nose. I think the first product that I was able to do that with was Old Forester. Like, I learned that signature Old Forester nose and taste, and now it's embedded in my brain, and I can't do it blind now, like, completely, because once I nose it, I'm like, that's the Old Forester, and I just can't help it.
That's exciting, but that really speaks to a great topic with, especially if you're just learning about bourbon, the power of a blind tasting. Is that something that you all recommend for everybody that's beginning to drink bourbon?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am a firm believer. One, I think it makes a great, social event that you can do with a couple of friends if everyone brings a bottle. But 2, I think people come into bourbon and it's a little intimidating for some. And they latch on to names that they know. And so they go with that, this X bourbon is my favorite. I'm familiar with it. I've seen their advertisements, and this is my thing. And I think that they would be surprised if you put it all in a blind, that they might like something that's similar, but maybe costs less. And wouldn't be open to just trying it, picking it up off the shelf, because they don't have the brand recognition or the familiarity with it. So we have always recommended blinds. That's the reason why we still do flight fights today, just to make sure that we're keeping ourselves honest too. I like to think that I'm not biased, but I want to make sure that that's completely removed.
Yeah, well, we are big believers in tasting blind as well, because it'll absolutely set you straight on what you like, what you don't like. And I think that's the most important question you can ask about bourbon is, I don't care what your label is do you like to drink this or not? And if you don't like to drink it, I don't care how much the bottle costs, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think we've all been a victim of the pretty bottle marketing once or twice.
Sure.
But, that's just part of the journey, though, too. Everybody's been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's keep talking about some of the facets of barrel proof and aging. What's your perspective on how age impacts that barrel proof? Do you think that they tend to age better? Do you think that older barrel proofs are better or worse? Can you tell any difference? Is there any trend that you've seen in the bourbons that you've been tasting?
That is something that we've been talking about a lot lately. Actually, just yesterday we did a review of the Knob Creek 15-year, which is 100 proof but 15 years old, and quite a bit more expensive than regular Knob Creek. And then so I'm looking at this limited release that people are looking for, but then I'm also looking at Booker's, which is getting up there in price, but is usually around 125 to 130 proof, but is only around 6 to 8 years old, mostly 6. For me, I would prefer the Booker's. So it's not all about age. I think that the point of barrel proofs and a lot of bourbons is just finding, everyone's unique, and you're going to find that right moment in time for it. And that might be 6 years, it might be 12 years, it might be 15 years. For me, I'm not so hung up on the age. I really just care about what's in the bottle.
That's what matters, what's in the bottle, and if you like to drink it or not. Sarah, thank you so much for being part of our chat and part of our video presentation this evening. Chad, we're going to say you've been part of it too. Thumbs up to you. We're going to consider you an honorary bourbon woman. It's been a real treat to talk with you tonight, Sarah. We look forward to seeing you in person soon at another Bourbon Women event.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers to you, Sarah. Thanks so much. She is a treat. So if you haven't signed up to subscribe to that YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. And we are coming into the home stretch. If you haven't bid on the e-auction yet, go do that. bourbonwomen.org. Clip on Sip Summer Series. You'll find your way there. Next up, Maker's Mark and the Lee Initiative are sharing with us a special release as a result of a community-driven Unity Partnership. So welcome Jane Bowie, Valerie Netherton from Maker's Mark, and Lindsay Osacek from Lee Initiative. Enjoy.
Hi, Bourbon Women. My name is Valerie Netherton. I've been with Maker's Mark for over 13 years, and I have my friend and partner in all things good and such an inspiration, Lindsay Osacek, with me today from the Lee Initiative. I'm thrilled to be able to use this connection with you to tell her story and their story and all of the wonderful work that they're doing, not just in our community here in Kentucky, but now as a national nonprofit and relief partner for our industry. So let's go back. Yeah.
So this is our story because we would not be here without you.
Okay, fair.
Yes.
Let's go back like way before COVID to when we first really met each other.
Yeah. It was March of 2017. A very different March from this one, but I remember being on a phone call with you and Thomas Bolton and Craig, several other people from your team, and Chef Lee and I were sitting in an office at 4th Street Live and said, hey, we're starting this nonprofit for 5 women in the culinary industry to help elevate them through mentorship, and it's very small. We had this idea 3 months ago. Now we're a 501c3. Do you want to partner with us?
And for Makers, having a female co-founder and wanting to support such a wonderful initiative.
Yeah, I remember the first time hearing Margie's story, and she's like, I had no idea that you all were such a woman-centered brand. And our first trip with our 5 mentees is always down to the distillery to do their private select barrel and learn all about Margie and the history of your brand. It's always, it's the first trip that we take together, so none of us know each other, and it's a great way to break the ice and really, understand our partnership, which is awesome.
And I should have known then how quick moving you guys were, because I was like, I don't know where I'll find money to support this, but sign us up, we'll be there. And I think 4 hours later, Edward's on 4th Street Live with a press conference.
Yes, with the mayor, toasting with Maker's Mark. It was literally 4 hours later. I think Thomas had to run from his office to get there. He was we probably need someone from Makers here. And it's insane to think that fast forward to 2020 and, on March 15th, I was down at the distillery with our 3rd class of mentees, doing our private select barrel with Amanda for her first private select tour in the States. The very next day, the governor closed our entire industry down, for good reason. It was unsafe. And you got another phone call that was so...
Very similar to the first,
We have this idea that we're going to turn our restaurant into a relief kitchen and feed our industry. Can you help?
And the same response.
Yes.
Yes, I love this. We need to do this. I support this. And hours later, you're...
Hours later, but that was the thing. You guys were also there. I mean, Thomas showed up. Allie Dodson showed up. We had boots on the ground. We launched a relief kitchen. The need was much larger than we ever could have imagined. That afternoon when we opened, we put a post on social media, and a half an hour before we opened for relief, we had caused a traffic jam through Old Louisville. We handed out over 280 meals in an hour.
It's incredible.
Thousands of diapers, formula, everything that you can imagine. And I remember looking at Thomas and saying, this is not just going to happen here. This is not a Kentucky program, or a Kentucky problem.
And while you're doing all that, I'm behind the scenes on just endless conference calls of what can we do to help our industry, and just kept coming back to, well, if we can take this, Edward's got 3 other cities that with restaurants, maybe we can do that there. And
yeah, I still don't know how you did this. How did you leverage our partnership to open all of these kitchens across the country so quickly? I just remember, it was every hour you'd call me so can you go to LA? Can you go to DC?
I mean, initially it was, we had some unallocated marketing dollars that, you know, we said, how do we help more people? And it was easy to go, can Edward open his other restaurants as relief kitchens? And you guys immediately said yes. And then I think like by 4 o'clock that afternoon, you know, the team had said, okay, we have this amount of money in unallocated media dollars. Can we go to these other markets? And so then we had, by like 48 hours later, you had LA, New York, Seattle,
Ohio,
DC, and Kentucky. So within 48 hours. And that was just incredible to watch your quick action and your wonderful partners that were quick to go, okay, we'll do this too, right?
Yeah, well, and I think it pays homage to like independent restaurants. They can pivot quickly. They've always that's by nature, they don't play by the rules. That's why they're independent restaurants. Right. And they were all able to mobilize so quickly. Yeah. You know, and you all, like, I don't know what conversation you had with your ambassadors, but it was like, then we just kept going because then we were in 20 markets by the end of 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from our budgets, we had been kind of frozen and tapped out, and so the next thing was, you know, we have tremendous partners. Our Cooperage Independent Stave and our wonderful distributor partner Southern Glaziers, you know, just making those phone calls, and Rob Samuels helped make some of those calls personally just to say, this is what we're supporting, and we know this need is there, and we know this relief is possible, and I mean, without hesitation, so many partners. And then we'd let our Maker's Mark ambassadors know, and within hours, I mean, what was it, $110,000
Yeah,
raised
I remember
by
someone from Doe calling me. I was like, how'd the ambassador letter go? I was like, I can't keep up. We've just raised $120,000 in 3 hours.
So I think the quick action was, you know, there were hundreds and thousands of people out there that wanted to do something that just didn't know how to get it going, and you knew how to get it going. And so it was easy to support because, you know, you were the first at getting out there for many of these markets. I mean...
Well, I mean, we're all very stubborn. We didn't want to lay off our staff, and I think it's really common in the restaurant industry, like we don't do helpless well. And we're all used to pivoting really quickly. You know, a vegan always comes to a whole beast feast. It's going to happen. Like, you just deal with it, and you do it with a smile, and you figure it out. And we saw our industry hurting, and these people had lost their jobs at no fault of their own. And we just weren't willing to take that. So we're extremely grateful for our partnership, because this would have never happened without the support of Maker's Mark. And people ask us all the time, like, why did Makers do this? Mm-hmm. I mean, I assume it's because you want to support the industry that supported you, but I don't know, like, what brought you, you know, what made you pour so much effort into this?
I think just, you know, our relationship that we already had, and you guys are the best that I know at seeing a need and putting quick and right action to it. Yeah. And so, you know, it's like, it's just finding out like a good thing. You want to tell everybody about it. You want to evangelize about it. You know, you want people to know, like, these people are doing really good things. And, you know, I think that's what I'm so proud of Makers is our brand voice and our brand muscle was able to help get the word out, which in turn helped raise a lot of money. Not that you didn't have incredible partners in all of these cities, because they had wonderful voices as well. But I think like that's the beauty of working for a brand like Maker's Mark is we can spread that message and that good news, and in turn people want to be a part of that. So it's been an awesome journey.
It's been insane. I know. I remember talking to you at least like 5 times a day, and Thomas at least 5 times a day. Yeah. You know, but it was incredible, and I can say that thanks to this partnership and the work that we were able to do, I have never felt helpless in the wake of this pandemic. I don't know if you feel the same way. I've never, you know, felt any sort of despair. Well, I mean, I felt despair, but it's, I've
felt
never
purposeful.
Yes.
And I think personally, from a personal standpoint and from a brand standpoint, what you guys have been doing have given us that purpose and that focus. So,
yeah.
Well done.
Cheers to you.
Yeah.
None of this would have happened. So.
And so now we're in this weird phase of trying
next?
to reopen and also places closing again. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're working on the reboot program, which you know about. So we're helping restaurants to reopen by investing in small family farms. We do believe that farms and restaurants are like two sides to the same house. What separates independent restaurants from chain restaurants is the product that they serve and the relationships that they have with the people who grow the food. So when we started looking at how we could help to reopen, our big focus was sustainably. Like, why would we go back to this old system? Mm-hmm. And so thanks to our partnership again, we've been able to do these cash infusions into small family farms to create a credit for restaurants as they reopen. And that credit's good for a year. They don't, everyone's on their own timeline to reopen. Yeah. And so they have this credit, so when they open, they can reopen with product that they're proud of. You guys have been a part of this too. You've been growing squash and zucchini for really Community Kitchen. I think they're digging potatoes this week, which has been incredible. And, we really just hope to help restaurants reopen with products that they're proud of, try to help with their food cost. Everyone's hurting right now. Mm-hmm. We have also opened 2 new relief kitchens, again, in LA in the wake of the shutdown. Funding is difficult right now. We thought we were finished with relief, and here we go again. But I am excited about, the possibility of creating sort of a fund to be able to act quickly in these situations, again, through your innovation. So
I'm excited about that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but just share with folks how they can find out more information or how they can donate to support the Lee Initiative causes.
Yeah, so you can visit leeinitiative.org. There are very detailed stories about all of our farms and partners, restaurants that we're working with. You can also donate directly through that portal. I can say one thing that we're very proud of at the Lee Initiative is we operate the Lee Initiative more like a restaurant than a nonprofit. I think when we finished relief, we realized 97.5% of every dollar that was donated to the cause went directly to aid. It went directly to feeding people. It did not go to overhead. We don't have offices. We have a very small staff. I was the only staff member when we started, but now there are 4 of us.
Yay, teammates!
Yes, there are 4 of us. But, we're very transparent, and you can also check out our Instagram. There are lots of fun stories there. You can see the meals served every day, which is always fun.
And to date, how many meals served?
So we're at 375,000 meals served. We've lost count of groceries and that sort of thing. And we've infused $1.7 million back into independent restaurants to help them rehire their staff and reopen.
It's incredible. And what I think was so special for folks and how they felt so connected outside of Kentucky is, we kept telling folks, if you're donating from New York, that money is geo-tracked, right?
Yeah, and you can select in the drop-down menu exactly what community you want to support. It's not only geo-tracked, but you can also say like, oh, I went to college in Chicago. I really want to help the restaurant workers there. You can let us know that, and we promise it will all go directly there.
So the next step for Maker's Mark and supporting the Lee Initiative is creating a really unique bourbon, which my friend and Director of Innovation, Jane Bowie, is going to share with me here shortly, and I'll give you a little taste as well. But I'm going to have Jane come join me and just talk about this incredible liquid, and you guys are actually one of the first to hear about it, so help us spread the news that this is coming through various unique events and fundraising, with 100% of its dollar going back to the Lee Initiative to support whatever the next phase looks like.
And I'm sure we'll build that phase together.
Sounds great. Thanks,
Great.
Lindsay.
Cheers. Thank you.
So I'm here with my friend Jane Bowie, Director of Innovation. Many of you probably have met her before, but Jane's genius brain is behind our next phase of fundraising for the Lee Initiative. And we're doing this through a super unique liquid, super delicious. We're actually getting a little sneak peek of it here. But Jane, can you tell everybody just kind of where your brain went with a special liquid for the Lee Initiative?
So we're calling this our community batch, and the inspiration came from the work you and Lindsay and Chef Lee have been doing, just thinking about how we're supporting our communities during this strange time where people just need their neighbors and they need each other. And so we wanted to create a liquid that was actually created by the community for the community. And so this batch, we've actually partnered with some of our key accounts all over the country, people who've actually come to Maker's Mark, been distillers for a day, and created their own expression of our whiskey through our private selection program. Yeah. So, you know, folks like Larry Rice at the Silver Dollar, or our friend, maybe Bill Thomas at Jack Rose. And we are actually laying down a barrel of each of their unique recipes of Maker's Mark. And we will then actually take those barrels, we will dump them together and batch them, and we will vat. So vatting's a process you don't see a lot in our industry. You don't actually see barrel vatting much anywhere. We're gonna vat them, we're gonna actually rebarrel them to lay them down and let the whiskey come together. So it's kind of symbolic of this idea that we're taking these different points of view and we're bringing them together to make something different and special and better. And the liquid, it's going to be a first of its kind for us at Maker's Mark. We're really excited. We're learning a lot in the process, but we think it's going to be something special, and hopefully people get excited by it, and it helps keep the Lee Initiative moving and growing stronger and better.
Yeah. And the unique thing about this is we are causing all kinds of headaches and storms, so that every dollar of a purchase of this bottle will go back to the Lee Initiative. We are working with our sales partners and our legal team on how do we donate this liquid directly to the Lee Initiative in various markets across the U.S., so that we're not going through a three-tiered system. We're not putting these on shelves in retail. While we love to support our customers at this time, we really want the maximum dollar donation to go back to the Lee Initiative.
And it's interesting, you know, you've done fundraising for Makers for over a decade, and typically it's about a bottle or a package. In fact, I've had so many calls about the Keeneland bottle you just did this year and how beautiful, and the jockey signing it and all of that. But this is the first time we've created a new liquid. And actually, it might be one of the most interesting liquids we've ever done or are going to do. And I think that signifies how much we value the partnership with Lee and how much we believe in what he and Lindsay are trying to do by really helping build the hospitality community back up, because it's just crippled right now. So hopefully you guys find this liquid, buy this liquid. We're excited to share it with you, and we're appreciative of all the partners who've participated in this project and let us use their unique Maker's Mark recipes to make this whiskey.
Yeah. So because these folks won't be able to try this just yet, will you tell them a little bit about what they would expect once they got their hands on a bottle of Community Batch?
Okay, so those of you who are familiar with Private Select, and this is a rough blend to kind of see where we might land. We're in the process of making this whiskey now. But the actual liquid is going to be a lot of heavy chocolates. It's going to have some dried fruit. That vatting process is going to make it richer and deeper and darker than what you would typically get in a Private Select barrel.
Okay.
But it's going to have enough spice for those of you that want that. But I think it's going to be pretty imbalanced because all these different recipes bring something different to the table. But the vatting and the extra time in our limestone cellar is going to make it darker and richer.
Yeah.
So
roughly about 7,000 bottles are we talking?
Is what we're looking to do. So it's approximately 34 barrels of whiskey, and that's it. So,
and then our goal is to raise $500,000 for the Lee Initiative, and just to support whatever that next phase looks like.
Yeah,
so cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all, I know. There's a community batch. There's a special release. It is very exciting. And can I tell you what Jane and Valerie just told me? You all here, right here on this broadcast, are the very first people in the universe to hear about this community batch. Does Bourbon Women bring you the meaningful content or what? If y'all haven't gone to bid on the e-auction and made your membership and made a donation, y'all need to do it right now, because we just brought you universe exclusivity. Jane and Valerie, we are very, very grateful for the information you're bringing us. Welcome to the Bourbon Women Sip Summer Series. How are you tonight?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Oh my gosh. You all, the people that are watching right now are losing their ever-loving minds about this community batch. You have to tell us more about it. Let me tell you what they said while the video was rolling. Fred, you can be my witness. They said, this is the most special batch of whiskey I have ever seen from Maker's Mark. Holy cow.
Yep.
Y'all want to follow up on that?
I think Jane would support that with, it's probably the most special bourbon we've ever created.
How are we going to top this? All right. Tell us everything about it, Jane. I want to know everything that you can tell us.
So I know we've just talked about, the folks have seen a video of what we're doing with Lee. And Val, I don't know if you want to give just a little bit of background about the Lee initiative, so people, the initiative and what's happening inspired this whiskey, truly. So you want to give just a quick background?
I think the video did a lot of that, but just explaining what the Lee initiative is doing. But I've never seen a nonprofit so quick to action for the needs in the community as I have this group. And what started as Lindsay and Edward a few months ago, now they have a whole team of 4 or 5, I think now, and just doing really amazing things in the community. So, Makers wants to continue to support that and continue to support their initiatives. And the community batch is kind of our next phase of fundraising and just driving awareness to this wonderful organization.
So
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so thinking about the hospitality community and going back to March when all of this started happening and the bars and the restaurants started closing and our whole industry was crippled, and thinking about these relationships and folks that have kept our lights on for all these years, suddenly just there's no industry, right? And so we started thinking about what we could do, and whiskey's always a good way to raise money and rally people around. And so we started thinking about these communities where Valerie and Lindsay and Chef set up these relief kitchens all over the country. And our private select program has been going, it'll be 5 years this winter. Wow. And we've created and partnered with bars and restaurants all over the country to create unique single barrels of Maker's Mark through our private select program. So we started thinking about, what if we actually used these relationships and these folks who've created their own expression of makers, and we actually made a whiskey that was for this community, created by this community. So what we did is we found partners in all these cities, and we remade their single barrel recipe of Maker's Mark Private Select, and we laid those barrels down. So there were 34 individual barrels, each recipe completely different. We aged them our typical 9 weeks in our cellar. Last Friday, we dumped those barrels into one batch. We blended them together, and then we actually rebarreled them in used Maker's Mark barrels, no staves, we're going to barrel vat them in our cellar for the next 6 weeks before we bottle. So the idea is you take these different communities and you come together and you make something stronger and you make something better and you make something different. And ideally, we're going to give back to these communities and hopefully help see them through this thing where we want as many bars and restaurants to reopen as possible. And it's been really inspiring to see what Val and Chef Lee and Lindsay have done through all of this. So this whiskey, barrel vatting, tank vatting's not something people talk a lot about. Barrel vatting, the only whiskey I've ever known that did it was a million years ago with Naked Grouse. And so we tried to even get details. So we're learning with this one, but we're really excited to see the results. So look for it later this fall. It's going to be a really unique, interesting whiskey, I think.
And so since this is barrel vatted, and you said you've got 34 barrels that are going into this, so can we presume that there's going to be a little bit of this to get around, right? How are you all going to distribute this? Because I have like 12 people that are begging to know, how do I get in? How do I get to be a part of this?
We're hoping to take it out to all of these cities that have had these relief kitchens and do special events where this won't be in retail. It won't be sold in a store. It won't be sold on a shelf. Our distributors are partnering with us. So we're hoping to donate every single dollar of this whiskey, 100%, to the Lee Initiative. And through special events and tastings and trying to figure out market by market. It's been a ton of work all around, but we wanted to get the biggest bang for our buck that we could with this one.
Yeah, and we wanted just to make sure, like Jane said, the goal is a $500,000 fundraiser for the Lee Initiative via these 7-ish thousand bottles. And so the Lee Initiative's webpage, our website will have a page that lists all the different types of events and where you can get this. And then Lindsay also did say they can email me at Lindsay, she's an SEY Lindsay, at leeinitiative.org to reserve a bottle, especially if you're in Kentucky. So go ahead and blow up her inbox.
Holy moly. Lindsay is not going to know what happened to her when she wakes up in the morning.
That's the goal. So we're figuring this out. We're used to doing things like this here in Kentucky where we create or donate bourbon to a nonprofit, and then they hold various events to raise money for their initiatives. And so this is a new venture for us, doing this outside of Kentucky and doing it with such a unique bourbon.
Well, I am blown away by the fact that this is happening, that you all have shared this information with us. This is incredibly exciting. And frankly, it just speaks to the heart that Maker's Mark has for hospitality and for the distilling community and for our people, really. I mean, this tracks, right, with what Maker's Mark stands for. This is absolutely something that feels right for the Maker's Mark brand.
Yeah, I mean, we can credit the founders, Bill and Margie Samuels, for instilling that, we support the folks that have, got the brand up and running back in the day. I mean, we've done fundraising with our first customer, Keeneland Racecourse, for the last 25 years and raised over $5 million for various charities via spring releases and just different partnerships. So it's something that's built into all of our partnerships, and the wonderful work that the Lee Initiative is doing is, who wouldn't want to support that? So
absolutely. Well, if you are not from the Louisville area and you're watching, and I know a lot of you are out there, leeinitiative.org, I believe, is the right web address to learn more about that hospitality support. It is an incredible outreach program, and Maker's Mark is obviously a big supporter, and this outreach is incredible. Jane, Valerie, it is just astonishing to hear how this is going to impact the community.
We hope so, for sure. And I think it's a different one. We've done a lot of bottle fundraising. I think it's maybe the first time we've ever created new liquid to raise money with. So this is a new space for us, and I think it's the right time and the right partnership. And yeah, we hope we get to interact and engage with a lot of people through this whole project. So yeah, we're looking forward to the fall.
Well, let's play this out. Let's say that this whiskey is, phenomenal, memorable. Do you see barrel vatting as something that Maker's Mark is going to continue to try out in the future?
If you ask our warehouse guys, absolutely not.
They're not here. We're asking you.
No, I don't know. I think it was just it was an opportunity to do something different and something unique. And these barrels individually, we dumped it on Friday, and I've got a couple of samples, and it tastes good. It tastes disjointed. It needs the time to come together. When you've got 34 really unique barrels that all have a point of view and all have a different taste profile, it needs that time. So I think putting them in a cold environment, giving them as much time as we can, we'll see how it goes. I think we've done enough experimenting. I think it's going to taste great. But I don't know that this is going to be something we start doing all the time. I don't think Denny Potter would be pleased with that at all. From a production
This is a pretty ambitious way to start it, right? I mean, you could have done like 4 barrels to start, and instead you all went to 34 right out of the gate. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, we just got a really good question in from Golf Whiskey.
Yeah.
Will Maker's Mark ambassadors, whom Maker's Mark, by the way, they herald them as like, they treat them like gods when they come on property.
It's true.
They ask Jane and Valerie, will they be invited to any events for this community bottle?
Absolutely. We always let them know first of anything we've got going on and any whiskey that we're releasing. So absolutely, you will know. And we treat them like, friends and family because they're incredible. I will say our Maker's Mark ambassadors, when we started with fundraising with the Lee Initiative for this COVID, relief kitchen, we emailed all our ambassadors just to let them know about the Lee Initiative and that every dollar that they spent could be reallocated back to their market. And within 48 hours, they had contributed over $150,000 to the Lee Initiative. So this is a group of people that is, they're just incredible. And when we call on them, they're always there.
That's awesome. $150,000. That's amazing. So good news for you if you were a Maker's Mark ambassador, and incentive to sign up if you haven't done that already. Valerie and Jane, I want to switch gears a little bit. We've gotten a few more questions for you from our YouTube watchers. Nancy Roberts wants to know about what are Maker's Mark's plans for the wood finishing series. Anything you can tell us about what's on the horizon?
I guess that one's for me.
That's for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're just launching 2020 right now. Our wood finishing series started with Maker's 46, and this year's release, they're all coming out at cask strength. It's inspired by our seasoning process, ton of vanilla, ton of caramel. We're really excited, and yeah, we're going to keep pushing the flavor boundaries. All of our innovation is really about exploring our agricultural ingredients and trying to understand where flavor comes from, and then the choices our founders made. So as long as we keep learning and we keep finding new things that taste delicious, in our opinion, we're gonna keep going with it. So I hope everyone likes this year's release. We're excited.
That sounds awesome. Tell me more about that. It seems like you've got this sort of innate sense of adventure with what's happening with Maker's Mark. And is that just built into the brand? That's just built into the way you all operate?
Yeah, I think, you go back to our founders, and Val talked about the community piece, but they were pioneers. They did something different and new at a time when maybe it wasn't the most popular or even the smartest thing to do. And I think, we didn't innovate for 50 years, but thinking outside the box and innovation was at the core of their spirit and who they were. So I think we're very purposeful with it, but it's rooted in the tradition of who Maker's is, but it's very much in capturing the spirit of Bill and Margie and how they went about things.
Well, Jane, Valerie, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk with you tonight. It has been a thrill to hear about the community bottle. Folks that are watching our Bourbon Women broadcast right now are ecstatic. They're excited to learn how to be a part of that. And we can't thank you enough. And thank you to Maker's Mark for being such a dedicated community partner and partner for supporting hospitality. And our thanks to the Lee Initiative as well. Jane, Valerie, we look forward to seeing you again in person when all this virus nonsense blows over.
Absolutely.
Having a cocktail, absolutely.
Cheers to Baker's Mark. Thank you all so
Cheers.
much. It was great to have you as part of our broadcast this evening.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Y'all, can you believe this? I think we made it.
We did it.
We did it. We did it. Sip Summer Series, y'all. And
It's the end.
it is the end.
This is the final moment.
It flew by.
Yep.
It went really quickly. So drop us some comments. I want to know what you enjoyed the most about Sip Summer Series. I want to know what you learned that you thought was interesting. And I want to know what you want to know next, because this has gone really well, I think. So, maybe we ought to figure out how to do this more often.
Well, I had a great time, and I have to say that, we had a lot of off-air conversations that I feel like people would love to know. And one of those was this whole commentary about men wanting to know if they could come to SIP.
Yeah. Bless your heart. You can come.
And I'm just like, I'm perplexed by all this because I have, as a man, I can't speak for all men,
right?
But are our egos that fragile? In your eyes, are men's egos fragile?
Why you put me in this box, Fred
I don't
Minnick?
know.
Why?
I don't know.
I am married to a wonderful man who fully supports Bourbon Women and all of the good work. And he could be more proud of the fact that there are women that get together to talk about bourbon. So no, I don't think that all men are fragile. But let's be clear. Not only are you welcome at Symposium, you are welcome at any Bourbon Woman event. Y'all can come. Here's the guidance for you though, okay? The difference in experiencing a Bourbon Women event, in my mind, compared to any random bar or any random restaurant, is that Bourbon Women tend to ask you first, what do you like? And then they say, have you tried X or whatever? And it is inclusive and collaborative rather than prescriptive. It's not, you should try this. Nah. My rule is drink what you like. So tell me what you like now, and then we'll figure out. If you like Chardonnay, awesome. Let's figure out what cocktail might be a great gateway for you into Bourbon Women. If that sounds like you, Bourbon Women is the place to be. And guess what? You got plenty of time to still join us on bourbonwomen.org. Buy your membership. It's $50. You get content like this, and you get a supportive network of fellow Bourbon women who can help you along in your spirit journey. So, and Fred, you've got a different perspective on this, because I would assume that you are around a different group of people most of the time. You're not normally around 95% women that are drinking bourbon.
Actually, no. I typically do surround myself by around women. Like, I really do. I look, because I've always had this belief that women think. They think in a more democratic process, and they, the conversation about like listening to someone about what they want to taste versus what they should taste is a great example of that. But my eye-opening experience was when I was in Iraq, and my unit, I had a female captain, I had women soldiers, and it was like, I saw the process of like how they would ask questions beyond just marching through a door, and that changed my life. And I actually wrote about that in my acknowledgments in my book Whiskey Women. But that experience changed my life. So I always think that, I love working with women because you challenge me.
Sure.
You challenge me. But you do it in a way that gets me to do a better job versus saying, you suck, and you need to do better, which is what I'm used to a lot.
We're collaborative. We'll tell you why you suck.
Exactly.
Right? There you go.
But like, you'll tell me why I suck in like, oh boy, yeah, that ascot combo. If Oscar picked that out for you, I'll give you a pass.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. But it's a different, I mean, and Fred's been, let's be clear, Fred's been a true friend to Bourbon Women from the beginning. We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary next year. Can you believe that? And y'all, it's going to be a blowout here in Louisville. So go ahead and mark your calendar. We're planning to be here in Louisville in August, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this is all over. But Fred's, you've been a dear friend to Bourbon Women since we launched. You've written Whiskey Women, and I appreciate that you know that women know what they're talking about with bourbon, right?
Oh, that's easy. That's no question to me about that, and they've always have. But you know, the big thing for me tonight is like the surprise whiskey that I gave you is a special one. It's the
this is unreal.
Parker's Heritage Promise of Hope.
I saw that come out and a hush fell over the room, you know,
Yeah.
like, is he really going to open that right now?
Just for you.
It was astonishing. I hope you all are drinking something really lovely at home. It may not be as lovely as this, though.
But I would say, as I sign out, I just want to say thank you to all the Bourbon Women out there for giving me the opportunity to, live produce this tonight and yesterday and Thursday. It's been a real honor. And Carrie, I'll give it to you. Cheers.
Cheers to you, Fred. And cheers to you, Bourbon Women. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, and go to spiritsunited.org to check out their work and advocacy. It's been my personal joy and pleasure to be with you here for the third and final night of the Sip Summer Series. Gosh, I wish I could lay eyes on you in person, but I know that those days will come again around soon. So until then, stay in touch with us on our social media platforms. Reach out to us via email. Check in about where your closest branch is and see how you can connect with them until we can be in person together. I can't wait to see you again in person. And until then, hold your friends close. Drink the good bourbon now. Don't wait. Cheers to you. Good night.